Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Gig Harbor City Council meeting of Monday, May 24th, 2024. I'm sorry, 2021. The time is 5:33. Due to public health concerns, this meeting will be accessible by phone by dialing the number we've provided at our website. Comments are only allowed during designated portions of the meeting. To speak during the meeting, press the raise hand button near the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 on your phone. Please refrain from raising your hand until the mayor has announced that he has opened the public comment portion of the meeting. Your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number will be called out when it is your turn to speak. When using your phone to call in, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. All speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. You would also have been able to send a public comment to be read under 3 minutes to our clerk. That would have to be before 3 p.m. today. Let's see, just one moment. We will do a roll call. Please say here after I call your name. Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Franich. Councilmember Franich.
Here.
Councilmember Himes.
Here.
Councilmember Markley.
Here.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Wook.
Here.
Thank you. And we have Councilmember Abersol has been excused. This is Mayor Kit Kuhn. From staff, we have City Administrator Bob Larson.
Here.
Community Development Director Katrina Knudsen.
Here.
Chief Kelly Busey.
I'm here.
Public Works Director Jeff Langhelm.
Here.
Finance Director David Rodenbach.
Here.
Tourism Communications Director Laura Pedette.
Here.
City Clerk Molly Townsley.
Here.
Assistant City Clerk Open Government Administrator Josh Stecker.
Here.
City Attorney Daniel Kinney.
Here.
I don't see anyone that I have not called. Okay, great. Please join us silently in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? Yes, Councilmember Markley. I'm sorry, Councilmember Denson.
Yes, I would like something moved off the consent agenda. And that would be item 8, the Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Race Team lease at Ancich Park. Could we move that to old business? I'm not sure if it's old business or new business.
Sure. What we could do is we could move it to the beginning of new business.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other changes? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Under Mayor's report, we have an interim city administrator update. I did want to let all of you know ahead of time, so I don't know how recent you've checked your emails, but what I'm reading, I have already emailed all of you. I wanted to give an update on our city administrator process. Staff and council have been involved in interviews with several qualified candidates. I'm happy to announce we have offered the interim city administrator job to Tony Pasecki. Tony was our interim city administrator back in 2018, shortly after I took office. He worked well with council, staff, and myself. I appreciated his help before and the help that he will be giving us shortly. We have reached a mutual agreement with him, but we still need council confirmation and his signed agreement as well. I am planning to have this on the June 14th council meeting. So, any questions on that amongst council? Great. We have a sports complex lease with the YMCA update that Josh has shown on our screen. The city of Gig Harbor and the YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap counties have signed a lease agreement that will enable the YMCA to fundraise, construct, and operate 2 new synthetic turf athletic fields in Gig Harbor. I'm excited that we've reached this milestone and can move forward with the project. I've been working with council, staff, and the Y for over the last 3 years to help get us this far, and I'm proud, as well as council is, of what we've accomplished and the timelines we've set. I'm pleased with this agreement. The attention to detail is remarkable, and we worked through many hurdles together. Referred to as Phase 1A of the sports complex, the YMCA will develop 2 synthetic turf fields adjacent to the YMCA that will accommodate soccer, football, lacrosse, and other field sports. The fields will include lighting, 100 parking stalls, restrooms, and a concession structure. The YMCA will operate and maintain these facilities and make them available to the public when not reserved for sports practices, games, and other events. There's a critical need for these play fields and our safe outdoor spaces, said Charlie Davis, the YMCA president and CEO. Gig Harbor is a growing community, and we have an opportunity to play a role in providing safe places for children to develop their skills, as well as helping to create a space that brings people and community together. The signed lease allows the Y to begin fundraising to help design and construction of the new athletic fields, estimated $6.8 million. The city will allocate a $350,000 recreation conservation office youth athletic field facilities grant towards the construction of the project. Under the terms of the agreement, the Y will have until spring 2023 to raise the funds and begin construction of the project. The project needs to be completed by December 2024. The city will develop the property separately, separating the future athletic fields and the Tom Taylor Family YMCA facility, referred to as Phase 1B, with new playgrounds, pickleball, bocce ball courts, and an event lawn. Construction of Phase 1B will begin construction as early as spring of 2022 and completed prior to the athletic fields. The new athletic fields will be constructed on undeveloped city-owned property located to the north of the existing Tom Taylor YMCA on Harbor Hill Drive. The city purchased the 11-acre parcel from Olympic Property Group in 2016 to add to the city's vision of a regional sports complex. Phase 1A and 1B are the first phases of the city's larger master plan for the Gig Harbor Sports Complex, which includes the YMCA facility, the Gig Harbor Little League fields to the southeast, and an additional undeveloped 6-acre parcel south of the YMCA. The master plan for the sports complex was developed in summer of 2018 and identified 3 phases of work to increase field and recreation capacity in Gig Harbor. For more information about the 1A of the sports complex or to donate money, please visit the YMCA's website at www.ymcapkc.org/give. You can also see additional information on our city's website. We're very pleased with this. All right. Our third item under Mayor's report, busy night, is a recreation of employees with 30 years of service. It's a long time, 30 years. I know I had a store that was about 30 years when I left it. So I'd like to thank Kelly Busey, Jim Staton, Tony Poling, and Molly Townsley for the 30 years of service that you've all provided us. Thank you. And with that, we're going to do a special proclamation honoring our city clerk, Molly Townsley. Proclamation of the mayor of the city of Gig Harbor, honoring city clerk Molly Townsley upon her retirement. Whereas in 1991, Molly Townsley began her service with the city of Gig Harbor. And whereas Ms. Townsley has provided exemplary and trustworthy support to the mayor and city council during her years of service as the city clerk. And whereas Ms. Townsley has provided leadership and guidance in support of the Gig Harbor Art Commission. And whereas Ms. Townsley has diligently served as the city's risk manager and a member of the city's safety committee, proactively working to keep our city safe. And whereas Ms. Townsley is respected and admired by her coworkers for her dedication, knowledge, and willingness to tackle any challenge before her. And whereas Ms. Townsley has been accredited as a master municipal clerk and has served as the president of the Pierce County Clerks and Financial Officers Association, earning the respect of her peers. And where now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kit Kuhn, Mayor of the City of Gig Harbor, do hereby express my sincere and council's and staff's appreciation and gratitude for Molly Townsley's 30-year dedication and commitment to the city, and congratulate her on the occasion of her retirement from the City of Gig Harbor, and wish her the best and continued success in her future endeavors and the next chapter of her life. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Gig Harbor to be affixed this 24th day of May, 2021. Congratulations, Molly. And we are going to have a Molly Appreciation Day in July where we can have a barbecue, and hopefully you'll come because we'll invite hundreds of people. I know you don't want it, but you deserve it. So when we get out of this on June 30th, I guess we're gonna let Steve Eckberg and everyone know to have them come.
Well, thank you, Mayor Kuhn and all the council members. I appreciate the opportunity I was given 30 years ago to step into and grow into this position. And I appreciate all the support that everybody in the community has given me over the years. I hope I leave without too many hard feelings, more fond memories than not, and look forward to seeing you out in the community again on a more social basis than an official. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Bob.
Mayor, council, staff, and members of the public, I want to take this opportunity also to express my gratitude, a debt of gratitude to Molly for this past year and a half. I've had the honor and privilege over my career to have served and worked with several outstanding city clerks. And I want everybody to know that I really feel that Molly was one of the finest I've ever been associated with. She has an impeccable integrity, and she just was always there. Just never skipped a beat here in the time I was here. I know everybody else has experienced that for much longer time, but I really want to thank her for her outstanding service to the city organization and to the community. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Bob. Enough. Move on.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the last item is a proclamation for the 70th anniversary Pierce County Libraries. Proclamation of the mayor of the city of Gig Harbor. Whereas the Pierce County Library System started serving 55,000 people on May 1st, 1946, offering 6,385 books from 7 locations with 1,108 cardholders. And whereas today, the Pierce County Library serves 620,000 people, offering nearly 1 million books, movies, and other items from 20 locations and online with approximately 360,000 cardholders. And whereas the format of books and materials and requests from the public have transformed in the past 75 years, and the library system has reimagined services to meet the public's needs to be a major regional leader in providing learning resources for all ages, delivering books, materials, and classes for enjoyment, and offering welcoming places and spaces for diverse communities to connect. And whereas in 1946, Pierce County Library may not recognize 2021 Pierce County Library with computers, printers, online books, instantly available on computers, tablets, and phones, and live online classes and events. 1946 Pierce County Library would know 2021 Pierce County Library by its continued commitment to connect people with valued, reliable resources at the right time. And whereas the library continues to be dedicated stewards of the public's investment to support residents' growth and curiosity, offer excellent reading choices, and work to connect and strengthen growing and changing communities. And whereas the Pierce County Library thanks Pierce County communities for allowing the library system to be the community's choice for the discovery and exchange of information and ideas, and to spark success for residents for 75 years. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Gig Harbor that May 1st through December 31st, 2021, be proclaimed as Pierce County Library System's 75th Diamond Anniversary. And I think, Pierce, then in witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Gig Harbor to be affixed as 24th day of May, 2021. When I talked to the Pierce County a week ago, I believe they said that Gig Harbor was the first library that they put in. So, and on a different note, it's our 75th anniversary. I just found out today that Gig Harbor's 75th anniversary year is this year. We were incorporated in 1946. So Laura's already got some gears turning, and we're gonna put out a banner and do a little bit of celebrating for our 75th year of being incorporated as well. With that, that concludes the mayor's report. Now the city administrator's report. Bob? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council and staff and the public, I'm going to give an update on the employee engagement and survey. In October 2020, a survey was conducted of our employees. The results of that survey indicated several areas of concern that will require work to improve our employees' experience and the overall organization. In late March, council voted to direct Mayor Kuhn to have the city administrator form a committee with the city administrator as a facilitator to address the survey results. The committee was to include directors, supervisors, an employee group, and 3 council members chosen by the city administrator with the purpose of recommending how to proceed with a consultant training program and to report back to the full council no later than this evening. That employee committee was made up of several volunteers along with 3 council members who were selected at random, and they met on Thursday, May 13th to discuss this matter. A summary of the issues that were introduced and discussed during the employee committee meeting were provided to all of our employees, Mayor Kuhn, and council members last Friday, May 21st. As a result of information that was presented and discussed during that May 13th committee meeting, the group agreed upon a strategy for moving forward and is prepared to recommend an action plan to mayor and council. These are the action steps to be taken. 1, it was agreed that we need a neutral third party to assist us in this effort, someone who has the expertise and experience to support our efforts and help us bring about positive changes. We don't have the internal staff capacity to take this on currently without the support and assistance of a consultant. 2, we'll develop a scope of work to include in a request for proposals document that will be used to solicit submittals from consultants to assist us in addressing these issues. 3, once we receive the RFPs or the request for proposals, a subcommittee of the larger group will be formed to review the proposals, select some of them for further consideration, interview those consultants selected as finalists, and then we'll make a recommendation on which consultant should be selected to perform the scope of work. 4, I've engaged with the city clerk's office to help me with the formatting, but we're going to be putting together a resolution of support for the council and mayor to consider, discuss, and ultimately approve to ensure the plan of action agreed upon continues to move forward this year and onward until it's been fully executed and completed. This particular piece of work is in progress, and we will provide the employee committee with a draft of the resolution once we've developed it. I'm looking forward to working with this employee committee on the next steps. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. And then we have a staff report. Letters of support for federal funding of capital projects. To give the report is our Tourism Communication Director, Laura Pedetta.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen on this one. So I'm hoping you can all see that. Is
Not
there a
yet.
confirmation? Federal funding update?
Not
No.
yet.
No?
Here we go.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to talk just a little bit about what we've been doing on the community outreach and government relations side. As many of you know, there are funding calls right now from our federal legislators, pardon me, for projects that fit in very specific categories. So what we've been working on is a strategy to go after those federal dollars. And that starts with future planning. So up front, our Public Works Department is one of our greatest assets. They really do a strong job of looking to the future, keeping the city moving, looking at the things that need to happen to support growth and support the influx of new users of roads, of roundabouts. They take a look at safety, they take a look at walkability, things that are going to increase the not only tourism to our town, but the livability and quality of life. So they look pretty far out in the future. They look at a 20-year span, a 30-year span, things like that would essentially support our quality of life here in Gig Harbor. So we identify the possible projects that could fit in those buckets of money that are very, very specific. And then we put together a description of those projects. So oftentimes this includes things like transportation infrastructure, safety improvements, and one of our projects that's outside of that bucket is the Gig Harbor Sports Complex as well. So those are an example of some of the future planning items that made it through the list for consideration. We take those to our government relations team. So we retain Gordon Thomas Honeywell as our government relations agency of record. They identify those city priorities that we've taken a look at and figure out which fit in to the narrative for those specific budget requests. And they help us put together a packet to submit a request to our legislators. As you see here, we've got Derek Kilmer in the House of Representatives. We've got Senator Patty Murray and Senator Maria Cantwell. We've gone out in actually reverse order of these photos. The call for Derek Kilmer's office was in early May. The call for Patty Murray's office just happened on Friday for their deadline. And the call for Maria Cantwell's office is coming up in the beginning of June. So we've worked with our agency to put together these packets for submitting to our federal representation. So that part, this is where we come in the Tourism and Communications Department. We handle the outreach and interactions for the city, from responding to those comments on social that you see very frequently to outreach to our city stakeholders. So we gathered support for these projects, for 5 different projects, and submitted to Kilmer's office, to Murray's office, and now we have a 3rd call for Maria Cantwell's office that we're working on right now. And we have an application packet due on the 1st. So up to this point, I'm going to go ahead and scroll to the next. We've gotten great letters of support from throughout the community, from Peninsula School District to the Community College, the Gig Harbor Complex for TCC, St. Nicholas, CHI Franciscan, which is now Virginia Mason Franciscan, the Police Department and Fire Department, one of our council members, Robin Denson, thank you for that. Our Pierce County Council member, Derek Young, Representative Michelle Caltier, the Waterfront Alliance, Greater Gig Harbor Foundation, the YMCA, Harbor History Museum, the Fish Food Bank, Harbor Wild Watch, Uptown Shopping Center, Harbor Hill and Gig Harbor North, Radiant is the property manager. That used to be OPG. Pierce Transit has given their support, the Pierce County Library, the Puyallup Tribe, Friends of Pierce County, the Washington Retail Association, especially on those routes that connect to Highway 16 for trade and tourism, trade and transportation. Washington Water, one of our utilities, Heron's Key, the Retirement Center, and the Puget Sound Regional Council. So we've got a good amount of support for these projects that Public Works has identified and that our government relations team has helped us figure out or where they're applicable. So we just want to take a moment and just thank all of our community partners for being a part of this, and fingers crossed that we'll make consideration for those federal funds. I know that really impacts what we can do on those transportation infrastructure projects with additional funding. So, any questions?
Yes, Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, two questions. One, if council has already passed a resolution saying, hey, we believe these are the projects that we should be going forward with, is it fitting and appropriate for the council member to vote again and say, yeah, I'm submitting a separate letter to support this thing to our congressman? I don't know. That's a question.
I can answer a little bit about that. Essentially what this would be is not necessarily saying yes to the project. You've already voted on that. This would be saying that you support this project receiving federal funds.
Okay.
And that's up to you as an individual member entirely.
The second thing, and this is just a personal thing, called how effective are the campaigns like this where we give them a form letter and their contribution is putting their name on it?
Well, I can answer that too. So there's very, very limited time. So they're not going to look at the entire letter necessarily and personally read each statement. Usually what happens is that there's a review of the agencies that support it, and they're looking at that top logo to say, okay, we've got XYZ in support of this. There's a groundswell of support in this community for this specific project.
Okay.
And that's essentially what that is. Well, it's really, really wonderful to have personally written letters. Essentially, the form letter suffices.
Okay, so they're basically counting names, not content.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not necessarily even names. It's usually agencies.
If I could add a little bit to that, there was a vital link or piece, and Laura did a great job with this, but that was a huge understanding we had from Dale Learn, our federal lobbyist, that the letters of support are critical. And as Laura pointed out, it's obviously the content is important, but also it's the idea that we've got critical community support behind this, which we do have. So it's a good thing that we took the time to do this. We're going to have to do it all over again. Looks like early next week with Senator Cantwell. She has a separate process, different from our representative and our other Senator Murray. So, but we'll keep pushing it along. I want to thank council for its support as well as Mayor Kuhn's.
Good. So you'll be looking for our support in that effort with Senator Cantwell.
Correct. Yes.
Great, I'll be there
now.
with a couple aliases, I'm sure.
Any other questions?
Great. Okay. We will go on to public comment on non-agenda items. So anyone from the public that we're going to start with ones that would have been written. But again, this is for items that are not on the agenda. So like anything with the kayakers, the human powered floats, or the Homeport, those are under new business. So anything that's not on the agenda. Bob, did we have any letters turned in?
Mayor, we did not receive any written comments on anything not on the agenda.
Okay, now I will look to the participants. Okay, you have 3 minutes. Please say your name and your address. Go ahead, Tom Tomlinson.
Hi, Kit. It's good to speak to you again. I spoke last week or 2 weeks ago just about some issues.
Tom, for the record, would you just say your address and such?
Oh, Tom Tomlinson,
Thank you.
7019 Stanage, Gig Harbor, 98335. And I spoke 2 weeks ago. I did send an email off to everybody this morning, no, last night. Unfortunately, Councilperson Denson and Councilperson Wook, I fat fingered, but I resent it here just a few minutes ago, so you guys have got a copy of it. It's just concerning R1 zoning versus R3 zoning and some concerns I had 2 weeks ago. I documented it better now, so it should all be in your hands. I did get a call from a council member, Franich, about it, and Adam Blodgett did return my email, like my third. He's returned every email I've sent, and you have too, Kit, so thank you. So I guess I'll leave it go at that, let you guys hopefully churn through all this and then figure out how you can enforce a code you took the time to write. If you're going to write the code, it should be enforced. So R1 versus R3, it's my next door neighbor. So I think I've hit the high points. I'll wait and see. Hopefully I'll hear back from somebody, in 2 to 3 weeks, whenever your next council meeting is. And we'll know more what's going on at that point in time. And I need to apologize again to Jenny and Robin that my fingers are bigger. No, they're not that big. But anyway, that said, thank you, Tom. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, caller 1253 or yes, 53874. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Kuhn. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Hey, Thomas Witt, Gig Harbor, Hunt Street Northwest. I wanted to share with the council and you, Mayor Kuhn, I think you're aware of this, but during and part of the reason I'm bringing this issue forward right now during city council meeting is I don't have any real faith and confidence that my emails are actually being received. Or if they're even being preserved as public record, which I know they're supposed to be, because during the last Public Works Committee meeting, I was provided, the wrong number was published and I couldn't gain access to provide public comments. And then when I went back in a few moments later, I was actually knocked off the internet, so I couldn't even receive Mr. Stecker's correction. So anyway, just comments regarding BD21-0308. B as in boy, D as in dog, 210308. It's for the courtyards at Scansey Park, and it's for a commercial new application for a clubhouse. And the concern I have specifically is final plat has already been approved for 174 residential units. And the city received this application. And the concern is they asked a few specific questions. They wanted to know the equivalent residential units, and they also wanted to know total impervious surface area. Well, the concern is after final plat, final meaning final, this would require a completely new application, a new submittal. And my specific concern with this is I fully expect that new submittal and new application will require an environmental impact statement to address the drainage deficits on rural Pierce County properties that are devoid of the drainage that was reported. The drainage that was reported, and it's what basically precipitated the project starting and continuing. So again, I was going to address this via email, but I just don't have I have no way to know without getting a response that anybody's even receiving my emails. And my thoughts is that you wouldn't delete public comment during a city council meeting. So that's the reason I'm bringing this forward. And I also wanted to make sure that the city attorney, who's present tonight, is aware of this. So this concern, I'm asking that the council, you, Mayor Kuhn, and the council, and your city attorney have a discussion about this. But I do expect that there will be an entirely new submittal. There will be a mandate for an environmental impact statement, an EIS. And I think not doing so would be very inconsistent with Gig Harbor Municipal Code And I asked that the city council please give that consideration. And again, I can't explain what happened the other day during the Public Works Committee meeting. But literally somebody clearly did not want my public comment submitted during that meeting. I'm not accusing any one specific entity or person of doing anything, but it was awfully interesting that at that very moment I was knocked off the internet. So anyway, I thank the council for allowing me to speak on this issue this evening, and for you as well.
Thank you. I don't want to address your emails, but I assure you your emails have been received and they are preserved. That's what we do. We don't, we preserve emails and they have gotten through to us. Thank you. Anyone else from the public that wishes to comment something not on the agenda? Yes, Linda Foster. Go ahead. Go ahead, Linda. You've got, please say your
Can you hear
name.
me
And your,
now?
yes, go ahead and say your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Oh, old people on the internet. Linda Foster, 6828 93rd Street, Court Northwest, Gig Harbor, 98332. I would like to speak to, I'm on the board of the Scansea Net Shed Foundation, and I usually ask in the last 4 or 5 years, every 3 or 4 times a year, when will we get painted and when will we get a new roof? And I believe I heard that possibly it was going to be postponed once again. And I'd like to speak to that. You know, our foundation works very hard at keeping the inside of the shed nice, preserved, taking care of the artifacts, getting people in there to look at it, welcome people to our community. And our shed is falling down on the outside. And the leaky roof, of course, we have to be careful of it damaging any artifacts that are on the inside because there are paper and cardboard things in there. So I just like to request that you reconsider if you are looking at postponing it once again. We did have a person come by the net shed a couple weeks ago or so and said that there was a board off the front of the shed lying on the ground right there. And so she went home, got a hammer and nails and hammered it back up onto the shed. Now, really, that shouldn't be happening. So it really is a lovely building, and it's on the historic register, and I would like it to see it taken care of rather than fall even further apart. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else, the callers? Press *6 or *9. Okay, we will close the public comment on items that are not on the agenda. We have no old business tonight, so our first item of new business is what was pulled off the consent agenda, which is Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Race Team lease at Ancich Park, Second Amendment. With that, I will turn it over to our Public Works Director, Jeff Langhelm.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a quick summary of the Council bill and Second Amendment that was back on here. This is a follow-up from our May 10th City Council meeting. At that meeting, there was some revisions made at the dais to section 4.1 of the lease that were, after looking at it after the meeting, were not clear to city staff or the city attorney. Specifically, it had to do with the ramifications of the terms of the lease if they were not followed through with. And these terms, ramifications, have been part of the discussion as both the First Amendment and this draft Second Amendment. And so they were a key part, staff and the city attorney recognized they were a key part of the amendment itself. But the council's motion on May 10th was silent on any ramifications if the initial or subsequent donations made by the team did not occur. Therefore, the staff and the city attorney drafted the attached revisions that were on the council's agenda for tonight. based on the council's motion and past intent by the city for any ramifications if the donations were not made by the team. That's really all I wanted to say to this. I know that it was requested to be taken off the agenda, so I can hand it off from at this point.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion? Let's see, I'm sorry. Any clarifying questions for Jeff Langhelm? Okay, Councilmember Denson, did you have a question for Jeff, or was that?
I'm not sure. I don't have a question pertaining to what he just said. However, I understand that I wanted it pulled off the consent agenda because I understand that when this went back to the canoe and kayak racing team, they were not at all agreeable to the amendment the council passed 2 weeks ago. And so they've come up with a new proposed amendment, and they've provided that to all of us. And Mayor, I believe you've seen that as well. So is this the appropriate time to talk about that? And whether we want to agree to that at this time?
Daniel, don't we do public comment before we go on any motion?
Well, if I may, let me just build off of what Jeff said, because I don't think that's in order just yet. The reason this came back, as Jeff explained, is because it was not clear for two particular things, or one item that he described as the ramifications of non-payment of the donations. The rest of it was passed by a motion and stands as passed by that motion. And so the reason why I asked for it to go onto the agenda was to clarify just that one point on how that should be handled, because that's the only thing that I didn't understand from the prior motion. So I wanted to make that clear. I am aware that there are potentially further conversations, and I can explain ways to get to that, but that is not where we currently stand right now. Where we currently stand right now is looking for a motion to amend those particular items. If anything goes back on the prior motion, it would either need to be a motion to reconsider, which would take you back to that amended motion that Councilmember Franich had on the table that passed, or you can do a motion to rescind and it would get rid of the prior action. But neither of those are on the table yet. What we have is a past motion that gave a 5-year term and gave $100,000 in donation. I just needed to know what happens if they don't hit those. If there are no ramifications and that was the intent, we can also establish that and make that minor modification. So I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but rebooting the entire conversation is not in order yet.
Why don't, I think maybe what's proper then for you to show your questions or what the changes that you made for clarifying.
Yeah, the only for the clarifying, all it was, if you look in the agenda packet on page 5 of 5, paragraphs I and double I in the middle of the page, as I understood the motion, that they would donate $50,000 by October 1 and $50,000 by June 30, 2023. But the ramifications that followed in each of those paragraphs used to be that they would lose the opportunity for the further extension. And because the term went to 5 years, it was incongruous. It didn't work, incongruent. So Jeff and I came up with some options for ramifications. So all I would be looking for is a clarifying vote on whether the paragraphs I and double I are acceptable to council. But if the 5-year term or the $100,000 seeks to be modified, that is separate than this, and there would have to be a separate motion to get to the point where that could be discussed.
Okay, so I heard what you mentioned, Councilmember Denson. Councilmember Franich, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. This was on the consent agenda as revised under the sections that Mr. Kenny just described. I'm not sure of any. Councilmember Denson's talking about some other lease. I have not seen any other lease proposals. I am really quite shocked that we're having this discussion. The only things, this motion carried 6-0 at the last meeting to revise this down to the new term, 1 5-year lease starting this year instead of 2.5 years ago. And the only clarifications that I thought that needed to take place were the timing of the payments. So as far as I'm not sure if I am quite shocked if Councilmember Denson has some other lease that she has that none of the other council members have.
Go ahead, Councilmember Denson. So, Daniel, is this okay? I'm trying to figure out where we're going. Is it okay for them to discuss this, like Councilmember Denson, and then it looks like we have to go to the original motion that you had, and then if that passes or fails, and then we pick it up from there. Is that correct?
Well, so no, I mean, certainly a clarifying comment from Councilmember Denson on what she was referring to is fine. But again, if there's going to be a pivot to trying to look at the term or the amount or anything, it's got to be set up that way. And so there would need to be either a motion for reconsideration to go back to the original motion that was at the last meeting, or a motion to rescind that would basically take that away. And then they'd start over possibly with what was sent out on Sunday.
Right. Okay, so Councilmember Denson, unless you have a quick answer to Jim, then I think we all need to proceed as Daniel had said.
Yeah, I just have a quick, actually, question for Daniel. And I know we don't do this very often, but if council members wanted to, I don't know if the right word is rescind or retract their vote from the prior council meeting, because I think they only have like one council meeting to do that. At what point do they do that? And at what point does this motion to reconsider or motion to rescind happen? Like, when is the appropriate time to do that?
Well, again, I don't know what the council wants to do as a whole, but a motion to reconsider can be made by anybody that voted in the affirmative. So it was a 6-0 vote. So anybody that voted last time could make that motion to reconsider. That would be voted on. If it passes, you would go back to the motion that was on the table, which would be council members' amended motion on the agenda bill. That could be voted again, or it could be amended again and altered, whatever council wants, they could do at that point, because you've done the reconsideration. A motion to rescind would again be a motion of this. As I understand it, it was the email was sent out on Sunday from the club wanting a different lease. And so that motion to rescind would take off of the table and retract what was approved at the last meeting. And then you would be sitting with a blank slate right now if you chose to. But again, none of that happens until you vote on it. So as it currently sits right now, all I'm looking for is that one motion to clarify, not touch anything that was passed in the last motion. So if somebody makes a motion, that would be different.
And someone that makes a motion has to make it that was voting at that meeting.
Correct. Has to be somebody that was voted in favor in that meeting. And I believe it was 6-0. So there are 6 council members that could do that.
Yeah, I was not there at the last meeting, so I did not vote in affirmative, so I can't do it.
Right. I'm going to take turns, Councilmember Francis. I'm going to let Councilmember Rodenberg go first. Go ahead, Councilmember Rodenberg. You're on mute, Councilmember Rodenberg.
If now is the time to make that motion, I would like to make the motion to rescind the prior vote.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Just to clarify, Daniel, can someone second it? That wasn't, I would imagine they could. That wasn't at the meeting.
So a motion to rescind doesn't have that rule. A motion for reconsideration does. So yes, she can make that.
Okay. Okay, there's a second. Now we will, we're going to go to public comment do we have to have, if we go to public comment on every, do we have to do public comment on a motion to reconsider?
No, you have a motion on the table, so you should vote on it.
Okay.
Or discussion on the motion.
Yeah, clarifying deliberation. Councilmember Franich.
No, I don't have any clarifications on the motion, but so
Okay.
right after this vote takes place, I would like to speak.
Okay. Any other deliberation before we vote on a motion to rescind? Okay, we're going to do roll calls on all these. Motion to rescind. All those in favor, Councilmember Franich,
No.
Councilmember Denson.
Yes.
A sec. Councilmember Himes,
No.
Councilmember Markley,
No.
Councilmember Rodenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Woog,
Yes.
I'm gonna die.
Mayor Molly has her hand up.
yes, Molly,
Because that was a tie vote.
I know.
Well, the motion to rescind requires a majority vote of the entire membership.
Okay,
And so I believe this motion failed because it doesn't have a majority, even if you were to vote to break the tie. Is that right, Daniel? Because it says of the entire membership.
So I'm reading it right now. So the way that I would read that is similar to every other requirement for majority vote, and the mayor has the authority to break a tie in those situations. I don't see anything different about this majority requirement. And
Okay.
it's a tie vote, and in this situation, the mayor would have the ability, should he chooses, to cast a vote.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
and what if I abstain? Well, then what happened? Well, okay. Okay, yes, I vote in favor of rescinding. So motion is back at square one. So all things are considered now.
Correct.
Councilmember Franich.
Yes, well, I'll tell you, I've never heard of this. This sounds an awful lot to me like there were some backroom discussions going on here, because I've never, ever in 13 and a half years heard this language rescind. I've only heard about a motion to reconsider. And I'm really questioning Mr. Kenny's interpretation. If we had our city clerk asking, it seems that there is a difference between reconsideration and rescinding. Mr. Kenny seems to, off the cuff here on the fly while he's looking at something, making an interpretation that I will be looking in and I take real question with. And he's also mentioned, as Councilmember Denson mentioned earlier, that there's some other lease now floating around. And now Mr. Kenny, who's our city attorney, is mentioning a lease that came out on Sunday, which is yesterday.
We're not here to go after staff or attorneys.
I'm just asking for clarification.
I'm happy to answer your questions if you'd like to ask them.
But those aren't questions, Councilmember
Yeah,
Francis. So
they were questions and I'll answer them. You received an email on Sunday with another proposal, number one. And number two, I do refer to things on my screen to help you interpret questions. And that is very appropriate. Thank you.
I did not receive anything on Sunday, anything to do with any language having to do with a lease.
Well, I do know that I got an email and it did say it was sent to all council. So the goal is to move forward and we're not doing that. So Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, thank you for your vote, Mayor. The lease that may be out there, what is the next step to bring that before council? Can we do that tonight? Or no, I guess we cannot because Councilmember Franich hadn't received a copy of it. But I'd like to get this done as quickly as possible. What would the recommendation be to get this new lease looked at?
I believe we could do this tonight. I've seen it before I was elected. Council members worked on something, so I think we can do this tonight.
Then I would like to make a motion that we accept the lease that was presented by the Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Racing Team.
Okay, I think what we need to do, so we need to, it's going to take some time, but we need to put this on the screen to be able to look at. So,
Okay.
Yes,
Mayor,
Molly.
You're on mute, Molly. You're muted, Molly.
I've got it here in the email. I'll put it up on the screen.
Thank you.
The one that
So
was,
point of order.
State your point.
Doesn't there has to be some advance notice for public comment for a public hearing for something new before we vote on it?
So technically, no, the requirement for an agenda in advance is a preliminary agenda, and you can do things that are not on it. However, everyone certainly needs to be able to see it and understand what they're voting on. So if Councilmember Franich has not had an opportunity, he should be afforded the opportunity to review it. And so I would encourage that.
Right. And I also might state,
Thank you.
if the public, if we're talking about something that's different, it still was on the agenda. If someone was interested in this, they knew it was still on the agenda. So it's not an item that wasn't on the agenda. We're going to go through this, but I still have a lot of questions up there. So I'm going to start with our city administrator, Bob.
Mayor, I just wanted to ask for clarification. And that if you had asked the council if they're prepared to discuss this tonight as a what I'll call a substitute amendment, not just for Councilmember Franich's sake, but the other council members as well. I don't think you've polled them or asked them if they'd had a chance to review this, if they're prepared to discuss it tonight.
Sure. That sounds very appropriate. Should I do that in a raise of hands of just, you know, who's supportive of?
Yeah, I would suggest it's more of a comfort level for the council members as a body, if they're prepared to continue the discussion, knowing that there is a councilor, at least one council member who has felt that he has not had a chance to review any of this as of this evening.
Right. Okay. Then I'll ask each council member, Councilmember Franich, are you willing to discuss this tonight?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Denson, are you willing to?
Yes, and I know that the team is preparing a grant application.
Please, I'm just asking yes or no right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Himes,
Repeat the question, please.
are you willing to discuss alternatives that are up on the screen or that were not in your package tonight?
I assume discuss means discuss, understand, but not vote on it tonight.
Okay, I got to put a new category on my little cheat sheet here. Okay, just a sec.
No, I think the idea of discussing something before you act on it is prudent. Okay.
Right. Oh, I agree. But you're saying you're willing to discuss it, but you don't want to vote on it tonight.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I needed, that category. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, I echo Councilmember Himes. Just as a matter of principle and the way that I feel council should conduct business, I would say a discussion is very necessary, but not to vote like in this manner without proper public comment, proper notice to council, and all of those reasons above.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, I'm in favor of discussing and voting on it tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Wu.
I'd like to see it discussed and not voted on tonight.
Okay. Okay, was that 3-3 again?
No.
Okay, all right, then, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, if it goes past 7:15, I think it needs a study session. So we're not gonna just be here all night on something. It's gonna require a study session. That includes the public comment. So anyone listening, if this topic, we have, some that majority wanted to discuss it tonight, but not vote on it. So if it goes past 45 minutes from now with public comment, then we're going to take it to a study session.
Point of order.
State your point.
We had 3 members who said, let's discuss it tonight, but not act on it until our next gathering, okay? We
Right.
had a split vote on the other 3, okay? One saying, yeah, let's go for it tonight and approve it, okay? One saying absolutely not, okay? And another one saying, yeah, let's go for it tonight and approve it tonight. That says the guys that said, hey, let's discuss it tonight but not vote on it tonight carried a majority.
I agree. Okay, all right. So you're saying you want to discuss it, even if we're not going to vote on this tonight, and we're going to do this another time, you're willing to just go on for hours on this tonight?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it'll be very quick, as long as we understand what's been proposed, okay? And we're not going to act on it tonight. We can think it over, bring it back for public comment, and then act on it at our next gathering. Pretty simple.
Well, if it was simple, this wouldn't be a 2-year thing into it. But, okay, we'll give it a try. We'll give it a try. Okay, so we're going to discuss this. So I'm just going to go by people that raised their hand. I believe Councilmember Wook hasn't spoken yet. So go ahead, Councilmember Wook.
So I'm sorry that I wasn't going to talk about this. Actually, I think it should go directly to work study session so we can do it. But so I don't have any comment on this new thing that's up on the website.
Okay, I guess I will ask if, okay, Councilmember Hines.
He just spoke.
I know, but he just had a comment. Go ahead, Councilmember Hines.
Okay, very simply, and I agree that we ought to go to a study session, but to save a half an hour, the basic issue here is, do we want a 5-year term with $100,000 upfront, or do we want a 15-year term, which is what the counter offer coming from the Kayak Club, and $150,000 upfront? That's it.
You're right.
That's it, period.
I like it. I like breaking it down to that's what it's all about. Yep.
That's what it's all about.
Okay. Councilmember Rodenberg.
It's also about getting that money before the end of the year. So somewhat immediately. So I would think maybe we should have this, whether we vote on it or not, until after we discuss it. I think it's so good and so simple that after a quick discussion, I think council people that may think it's complicated would see that it's not, and we could make a vote on it. But I'm willing to discuss that and get to that point later.
Right. I do see, whereas you're right, that not only is it $25,000 more, but on the first payment, but the second payment, instead of being due a year from now, or a year and 3 months, it actually would be before the end of this year for $25,000 is more. So let's look at that whereas right there. So it's $150,000 now instead of $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be 3 15-year leases starting when the dock is open to the public. And then the payment is $75,000 in October, which is the same date, but $25,000 more. And then the second payment, instead of June of 2023, is is $75,000, $25,000 more, and it's due by the end of this year. So back to what Councilmember Himes said, it is actually quite simple if we want it to be that way. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, I agree with Councilmember Rodenberg, and I would also note that it's also about the fact that the Canoe and Kayak racing team has said that they're not going to sign that last amendment that we all discussed 2 weeks ago with the 5-year lease. So if they don't sign it, we have no agreement anyway, and we're back to the drawing board. And it's also about the fact that they've got some pretty tight fundraising timelines in here to fundraise for that 75,000 by, what is it, October, and another 75,000 by the end of the year. And they're busy writing grants right now. They've got looming deadlines. And if they can't tell the grantor sources that they have, some stability with a 15-year lease is what they feel will give them that stability, then they're going to miss out on those funds. Then they're going to have difficulty meeting these fundraising guidelines. And so again, if we delay this too long, we may be back to the drawing board, extending these dates.
Okay. Molly, there's some additional information in Kirsten's opening letter that I think is valuable for council to look at. In the email that she sent, it's not that one. There's maybe, let's see. There was another letter prior to that. It came in the same one. It was the actual email. Okay, it just basically talked about how well, I don't want to read it all. Do you see that original email, the beginning of that email that she sent? It's dated, yeah, it's the Sunday, May 23rd. Yeah. Okay, so I think they had this. They did listen to the meeting, so this is an explanation as to why they felt 5 years was very difficult. So it was our okay, if you go further down, okay, the reason of a 15-year or longer lease term is so important to us is the same reason lease length is critically important to all nonprofit organizations. Operational stability. Operational stability is essential to our ability to plan, fundraise, and attract support, including for the community dock project and for our ongoing efforts to make the Gig Harbor a Team USA Olympic Training Center for Spirit Canoe and Kayak. The 5-year lease would put us in a very tough position going after major long-term objectives. I do have to say, when they did explain that to me, it makes sense. If you're trying to do an Olympic team and get grants and get funding, a 5-year doesn't give you very much stability. So we listened carefully to the council's decision. Anyway, the rest is mostly, you can read it right there. It's mostly what we already know. But Coach Aaron did explain to me about trying to get grants and fundraising and recognition as a national team or international team. And I felt there was a lot of justification in what he had to say. Just want to make sure people knew that. Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion tonight. And thank you, Councilmember Benson, for bringing up the fact that, yeah, they rejected it based on the 5-year thing. However, having said that, we do have the capability to counter. I haven't heard 10 years and $150,000 being off the table at all. In fact, next time we gather, I will throw that on the table. I won't do it tonight because we agreed we would discuss tonight, but we're not going to act on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, one thing, I'm not sure whether it said it in this, what was presented by the Kayak Club, but the 15-year lease is actually a shorter time length than what the city has offered other nonprofits on the waterfront. So I think that's something just as important, and it's critical to get their grants out quickly. So I do whatever we can to expedite this. Maybe a couple council people in the last 5 minutes have changed their mind about whether they'd like to vote on it or not, seeing how really simple it is.
Thank you. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, I see and understand the simplicity. This is simply a matter of principle to me. I just don't, I would agree that we should either take it to a study session or at least have more of a public process than just throwing this in here at the last minute, you know, for council to try to vote on and make a decision without the ability to counter, without the ability to, you know, to further explore this. And so I'm extremely supportive of the Canoe and Kayak team, always have been, I always will be. But this is just, in my opinion, not the way we should be doing things. It just doesn't feel right. So I would say taking it to a study session where we can actually hash it out more would be good. And I'm not going to change my mind about not voting on it tonight. I think that there needed to be some more public process with this if we're going to change a complete lease. I don't think it should be at the last minute.
Right. Councilmember Franich.
Thank you for those comments, Councilmember Markley. This is a substantial change. This is not, the way I see this here now, this is a 15-year renewal term, not separate 5-year increments. And as I said, it's just really surprising that the amendment carried 6-0 at the last meeting, and now we're having this discussion. That's one thing that really boggles my mind. But as we move forward, I'll be looking forward to what Councilmember Hymes's amendments may be at the next council meeting. I would urge us all to keep in mind that initially the agreement with the Kayak Club, they were going to raise $500,000 towards a $1.2 million project, which is roughly 40% of the cost. If we're going to stay true to that, and they're going to, the project now is $700,000, 40% of that is $280,000. So if the majority of this council is entertaining tying up a public storage facility for this amount of time for a private organization, then I would hope that they would take the equitability into consideration, not only on the cost of the building, but more importantly, to the fairness to all of the other residents of the city of Gig Harbor who may want to store their kayaks or stand-up paddle boards at this location. It's been my #1 problem from day one, is the inequitability of giving a private organization 60% use of a publicly owned building. So yeah, this is this whole thing is quite surprising to me. And to tell you the truth, it smells of a lot of backroom deals that have been going on that are troubling at best.
Okay, though I have shown my support for in the original motion, or for the kayakers, I do have to think of the future of the city. And my point is, if we don't discuss it, we really should not be voting on this tonight, because what's to stop any person or any group from emailing council something that's on the agenda over the weekend and then voting on something by reaching out to the council prior to it? So you could have a developer, you could have anything on the agenda, and it could all be worked to something completely different than was put out in the agenda for everyone to see. And so we might be setting a precedence for the future of working on something that really, wasn't even on the agenda in the same format. So I can see how council thinks that discussing it tonight is good, but voting on it should probably be left for a different time, especially when it goes back and forth. So if there's no more comment, then we will go ahead. Then we will proceed to move on. Councilmember
Mayor?
French.
Yes, since this has come up tonight, are you willing to take public comment tonight as well as next meeting?
I think, and I would like council's support on this, the majority of council. I think we need to take this to, either we take it to a study session and we have public comment, or we do it at another council meeting and we have public comment, but we don't do it twice, is my thought. I think what happens one time is going to be the same as another with public comment, and I'd rather just do it once, either a study, and I don't know if we really need a study session. I think just putting it on the next council agenda with all options available. But we are going to have direction. We're going to need, actually, we're going to have a study session, because I want to put something on the agenda that is what council would like. They can amend it, but I don't know what to put on there. So I think we need to have a study session to know what to put on there. And then if it's amended, at least it's hopefully close. Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And by the way, I threw out that other alternative, the 10-year. The flip side of that is 5-year and the price goes up in terms of money up front. There are multiple ways to get at this problem, okay? Right now, we're talking about timing. They're talking about timing being the issue. And when we had the discussion, we had both money and timing on the table at the same time, which led us to the motion that was basically approved. So yeah, I think the idea of a study session to explore these alternatives and then come in with a proposed amendment would be worthwhile.
Great, sounds good. Daniel, it's up to us if we want to have public comment at a study session. Is that correct?
At a study session, yes.
Okay, I'd like to know which direction on that from council. So could I have a raise of hands, just like what Robin did? Put your hand up if you want to have public comment at the study session. We're going to get it at the council meeting, but I'd like to know what council would like to do on that.
So that would be both
Yes,
council and council meeting and study session for public comment.
right. Because what we're going to do is we're going to come out of that study session with you telling us what you want on the agenda. And then if other people want something different, they can amend it, but at least we'll be close enough to be, I think, to be able to vote on it. So it would be a public comment twice or not. So those that want public comment at the study session, raise, put your hand up.
And that's in addition to council meeting.
Yes. 3, 4. Okay. We will work to get a study session in the near future, and all those people that are listening now, I know you wanted to talk on this, and you will be able to talk twice now. You'll be able to talk at the study session if you'd like, and we'll have a council meeting that you'll be able to talk at that time as well. I apologize that you're not able to talk tonight, but I think we really need to get direction from council a little bit more before we hear more comment, but you will have those 2 times. And we'll make sure that we post that study session online so that everyone's familiar with when it is, and it will be titled, what we're talking about. Councilmember Rodenberg.
I'm sorry, my hand was up
That's okay.
inadvertently.
No worries. Okay. Thank you. We will go on to our first item on new business, which is Ancich Mitigation Monitoring, Professional Service Contract Amendment number 3/DCG. The report is from our Public Works Director, Jeff Langhill.
Thank you, Mayor. When Ancich Waterfront Park was originally developed, there were requirements set forth in the U.S. Army Corps permits that had the city performing annual mitigation monitoring for 3 years after construction. David O. Consulting Group completed the previous 2 years of monitoring as required. However, as part of the 2021 budget process, this required third year of monitoring was overlooked. And so we are here tonight to request that the contract be completed and enacted. The purpose of this work is to verify the mitigation plantings that were planted as part of the Ancich Waterfront Park upland improvements are established and will meet the requirements of the Army Corps permits. It's fairly simple to do. It does require a biologist. It requires report writing in a format that is acceptable to the U.S. Army Corps. And so that's why we are putting this forward. And if we don't submit this report to the U.S. Army Corps, we're in violation of our permit, which, by the way, we are asking the Army Corps for an additional permit for the community paddlers dock. I have not yet received that signed permit from the Army Corps, so I don't want to inhibit any other issuance of permits from the U.S. Army Corps by not following their previously required permit conditions. So that's why we're here tonight. Apologize we didn't talk about this as part of the 2021 budget deliberations. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Franich.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm just wondering, how is it going to take 37.6 hours to assess the vegetation that is down there? I mean, that is something that seems you should be able to go down. I mean, 37 hours, that's like almost 5 full working days.
Yes, yes. And it's based off of the fact that they have to do an assessment. They don't just do an assessment on the land. They have to get out and get in a boat and be out in the water and do an assessment of the intertidal zone too. And so there's a lot to it, and the reports are not easy. You can imagine that these reports are not simply cut and paste. It is fairly detailed reports.
What are they going to be monitoring on the water? Did we put plantings in the tidal zone?
No, they're going to be seeing what the tidal zone is looking like now versus when it was first developed, to see if the mitigation that was completed is beneficial.
All right.
Great. Okay, so we'll open up the public comment right now. Bob, were there any public comments that were turned in, written?
But Mayor, we did not receive any written comments on this particular item.
Okay. Great. Now I'm going to open up the phones to anyone that wishes to talk about this item, which is new business 1, Ancich mitigation monitoring. You have 3 minutes. Please say your name and your address. Aaron, Houston, you're up.
Hi there. Hey, so just kind of a point of clarification here. Because I was not allowed to speak during the agenda item that discussed Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak, I had not spoken during the non-agenda time, and I would have done that had I realized I wasn't going to get a chance to speak on the actual agenda item. It seems that my right to speak was somehow subverted there. So I want to make sure that I get a chance to speak. What would be the best way to handle that?
I'm sorry, Aaron, but then we would have 20 more people that would want to speak too.
But I was assured that I would be able to speak because it was on the agenda.
Well, I think a lot of council also thought they would have got this accomplished tonight too. but things change. And it changed for pretty much everyone here a little bit differently than they thought. So I will say that you will be given 2 times now to speak. We will be able to let you speak at the study session. So we're trying to be very thoughtful to open up. Normally, we don't open up a lot of study sessions to public comment. So you're going to be allowed to speak at the study session, and you're also going to be allowed to speak at the next council meeting, whatever comes out of that study session. So yeah, I'm doing the best I can. I apologize that that tonight wasn't the night.
Yeah, again, it's not so much a concern over the lack of the agenda item being passed. It's more of a point of clarification of, since again, I wasn't allowed to speak during the non-agenda time, it just doesn't seem very fair now, but I understand.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on the Ancich mitigation monitoring? Okay, I will close the public comment on that. And council deliberation on this and action. I think we could do some action on this. Anyone want to make a motion? Councilmember Himes. You're muted, Councilmember Himes.
Well, I do that all the time. I was saying, since we don't seem to have an alternative to this, I move that we approve the Ancich Mitigation Monitoring Professional Services Contract Amendment number 3/DCG.
Councilmember Wook.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. 6-0. Okay, our second item is Resolution 1209, adopting the Ancich Homeport Feasibility Study. Our report tonight is from our Public Works Director, Jeff Langhelm.
Thank you, Mayor. With passage of Resolution 949 in 2013, the city set place a visioning and direction for the development of the city's Ancich Waterfront Park. These park uplands are now developed, as you all know, and there are 2 overwater structures that are remaining to be built. Since the adoption of Resolution 949 and through the development of the park uplands, the city has worked with park stakeholders, including commercial fishing operators, neighbors, the canoe and kayak race team, and general park users to create collaborative and compatible uses within the community, to preserve the historic net shed and views of the open waters in Gig Harbor Bay, and to provide boat storage and public access to the water in the shoreline. With the community paddlers dock preparing to go out to bid later this year, the last major site development work that remains is the moorage for the Gig Harbor commercial fishing vessels. In 2020, the city selected David O Consulting Group to work with local fishing community local fishing operators, adjacent property owners, park stakeholders to review and assess the variety of alternative layouts for future commercial fishing homeport dock at the park. DCG produced a feasibility study as a result of the contract that we enacted with them. And they concluded in that feasibility study that alternative E, which is a linear dock, is the recommended alternative. And this is based off of quite a few approaches and items that they reviewed. This is based off of commercial fishing need that our commercial fishing operators needs that they identified, the site opportunities, and the site constraints. DCG, when they prepared the report, reviewed the economic data that comes from commercial fishing and the impact to that. They reviewed the parking that was available at the site and nearby. They reviewed transportation analysis of how much impact there would be on vehicles going to and from the site. And they conducted interviews with community members, all of their stakeholders that they brought into the discussion. So you have before you tonight Resolution 1209, and that resolution recommends that the city adopt the conclusion that was made by DCG as part of the study. which is essentially to proceed with alternative float layout E. So that's my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, can you, these turning ratios that you've, that have been determined for the different types of docks with the, if I'm a little concerned about the safety concerns. Can you show, I think we should really show council, myself and others, alternative E's turning ratios, and the other, I guess the hybrid or the Hilux, those turning ratios as well. Could you put that on the screen?
Sure, happy to show those.
And then if you would, let's start with whatever you want, but if you could explain each one.
Sure, hopefully you can all see my screen. Okay, I'm starting with alternative E. This is the alternative as recommended in the DCG study. What we've done here is we've taken the alternative from the study itself and we've added maneuvering areas on here. These are approximate locations of how a vessel, the area a vessel will use to come in and moor to the dock and leave the dock. So the yellow line is without rafting, and this magenta line is approximate area with rafting.
Now you've also moved the dock, you've angled the dock west, so there's a little bit more view and safety precautions. Is that correct?
Well, this was the alternative E in this exact layout as provided as part of this commercial feasibility or commercial fishing Homeport feasibility study.
Okay, before you switch, I'd like to see, as we go through these, I'd like to let council ask any questions they may have with the same slide on it. Councilmember Himes, did you have a question on this particular?
Yeah, I had a question leading up to this. At our March 4th gathering on this, I thought we had agreed to go forward with some sort of public outreach, like an open house or whatever on these alternatives. And my question is that still in the cards, or did we jump past that, or where did that thing go to?
Well, what we agreed to was to have a public input on the study itself. And so that's where we are tonight, is to have, as part of this resolution, is to have a public input on the study itself.
Okay.
I might add to that we had a year and a half of public outreach, and Nicole brought all the parties together at the AV rooms downstairs, all the different groups from landowners, kayakers, the public, the fishermen, and we did that for a year and a half, and we almost had it. And then a handful of people they wanted as big as they could get, so we decided that we had to hire consultants, and so then we did the same thing, except consultants gathered different data than what we had done, but we still had all the public with those two as well. And they'll also all be able to speak tonight as well.
Okay, the reason I say that is we seem to be heading for a showdown of fishermen versus people who don't want to spend money and love views. And with the sample size that we've got in the study groups that have led up to this point, I feel uncomfortable that we're influenced by what we've heard so far. That is, we had an email free-for-all this afternoon, just in the closing hours, okay? And I would hate to base a decision like this based on that input. I think we need I think we need a broader input. Two, I think we need educated input. For example, I did some calculations of my own on the optical. How much did you cut down on the vision angle by each one of these as you look out into the harbor, okay? The degree of that angle, how it changes between Alt E and Alt G and Alt H, okay? And we haven't shown the public any of that. In fact, that seems to be a point of argument, okay? Some people say, it's no problem, blah, blah, blah. But I think we really need to nail that down, okay, on what that really is. Also, I don't think we have any cost data on this alternative G, do we? Did I miss something here? I know we had it on H, and I know we had it on E, but G, I don't think we had anything on that one.
We don't have a cost data on alternative G or H, though it would be similar to alternative A that was provided as part of the study. It'd be similar.
Okay. Okay.
And when we get done with the diagrams, we'll go back to the study. Jeff can there was a lot of, I mean, again, all the parties could not agree. And so that's why we went out to the consultants.
Yep.
So the consultants did provide a lot of data to have the recommendation E, since we couldn't get Gig Harbor as on anything to agree with everything. No one's going to. Everyone has a different thought. We went to the consultants and they had a lot of data. So we'll look at that.
I think, by the way, I'm not criticizing the study by any means. It's a great study, it really is. They've got the data, okay? The thing that I'm talking about is this is coming down to a personal interpretation of the data that's been presented in my mind, okay? And that's what's troubling me. And I'll stop right there.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead to the other pictures, Jeff, and then maybe there's those graphs on the DCG you can show.
Right. Okay, I'll move to alternative H now. So at the March 4th study session, we were asked if we could take what was the Helix design and do a hybrid from that, because as we recall, a number of issues were brought up from the Helix design that just wouldn't meet permitting requirements that were created back in 2014 when Helix put that design together. So, so we've taken what Helix, the concept Helix had, and put it into a plan that we felt staff-wise we could develop with the most amount of moorage available for the area in front of Ancich Waterfront Park. And so that's the design you have before you here. That's 17 vessels moored in a variety of sizes. You can see those vessel dimensions are numbered on the left and in the diagram itself, with the intent of trying to keep the dock, the vessels, and all of the maneuvering areas within our aquatic lease area. And so that's the orange or yellow line that you see here. Just an estimated maneuvering area.
So the boat that, see where it's, if it goes down to the Jerkovich dock, at that boat where right below where it says private float, would that be the size of a fishing boat for the turning ratio, or is that a pleasure boat?
I can't tell exactly, but I'm assuming that's a pleasure boat. It looks much too small to be a commercial fishing vessel.
All right, so so that means all these kayakers are going to be going out, and plus the chase boats that the kayakers use, which have motors, and then the yachts that we possibly, one theory is renting this out to yachts in the summer. They're all going to be backing up all the way to this yellow line. Is that correct?
Well, that's the estimate, is that, yeah, in order for them to maneuver out of their slip, they're going to be in reverse for at least the distance over here to this yellow line before they maneuver and turn to go out of the bay. And I will acknowledge that I have received comments that maybe the size of vessels, there's too many 80-foot vessels here, or there's better ways to lay out these finger piers to or finger floats to be able to reduce some of the impact. Totally agree that if that's what the need is, we can do that. This was based off of just some preliminary concepts that we had as staff. So these larger vessels here at the very end, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all 80-foot long by 22 feet wide. Maybe we don't need 4 of them. Maybe some of them can be 60 foot and we can maneuver just with 2 80-footers on the end or something. I don't know. So there's definitely ways to adjust these as necessary.
Councilmember Rodenberg. I'm sorry, you have your mic. You know, it's happened to me a lot. Luckily, I don't have to turn it off, but it's hard.
I was going to mention exactly the point that Director Langhelm just did about those vessels 7, 8, 9, and 10 being 80-footers. They don't need to be. If they could swing a couple to the other side, then you could put in 4 60-footers in that area, and that would reduce that gold line as far as traffic. But it's important. People are thinking that these vessels are going to be coming out, in and out, and in the traffic of the kayakers, and that's not necessarily true. Those seiners come in and they will park for 6 months at a time. And when they do move, it's generally with the tide, and it's generally very early in the morning or late at night. So the traffic situation or safety situation is exaggerated. And so I just thought I would comment on that. And I'm glad to see that this is a great concept. Thank you very much, Jeff, for presenting it. And I'm glad to hear that it would be easy to just modify it somewhat. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rodenberg. Councilmember Markley.
Yes, thank you. I would agree that if we could reduce the size of those 4 slips from 80 feet to 60 feet and still give them a couple of 80s or 1 or 2 on the other side, that might be a really nice compromise, you know, to be able to get the view corridor, to address that issue of the neighbors that are wanting to keep that view corridor. That would open it up a little bit to reduce those 4 slips at the end there. Is it possible to angle this kind of similar to the linear design, maybe not as exaggerated of an angle, but if not, I still think this would work great. But is it possible to even angle it a little bit towards the Ancich Teraboccia side? Just asking.
Yes, it is. We would be able to rotate it, hinge it around this point here where the gangway touches the floats. The thing we have to be cautious of, first of all, if we put 80-foot vessels on the west side, we have to be aware that that's going to increase the maneuvering area, of course. But if we keep it as is with 60-foot vessels over here, we would just essentially to attempt to not use the area outside of our aquatic lease. In other words, cross this dotted line here. That's what this dotted line is, the approximate aquatic lease area. We could rotate it and take up this space here that you see between the aquatic lease and this orange line. So it could be rotated a few degrees, making it further away from the east side of the aquatic lease area.
Thank you.
So Jeff, if the 80 were at where 12 and 11 is, they could theoretically back out towards the open water. Is that correct?
Yes, 12. But if you angle it, it would be harder for at least vessel 12 to maneuver by backing out. But you could, yes.
Okay, because otherwise, if you don't have fingers over there to accommodate the 80, you're going to get 2 boats and that boat 17 maybe.
Right.
Okay. Councilmember Rodenberg.
It's also important to note that the revenue generated by these many vessels as compared to alternate E, there's twice as many vessels, more than twice as many vessels on this example H as there is on E. So more revenue. And a lot of people are concerned with the view corridor, taking out 7, 8, 9, and 10, putting in 58-foot seiners would open up that view. And then to Councilwoman Markley's comment, rotating it a little bit to the northwest would also open up that view.
Thank you. Okay, Jeff, I think before you go, did you have one more thing you were about to say?
Oh, I mean, you can continue to break this down into smaller pieces. One of the things we talked about, if you recall, that we had talked about possibly angling some of these finger floats out so to reduce this maneuvering area. Once you angle them out, you don't have to bring a vessel in directly perpendicular. And so, but then you might lose a slip. So, I mean, it's a give and take. So you can reduce the maneuvering area with fingers, but you end up losing a slip or two. Again, there's a lot of magic lines that we have.
But so you might lose a couple slips, but you could actually angle the figure.
Yes.
Then they can only turn one direction, but they could turn out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now I can bring up the table that the mayor was referring to. Let me stop sharing here. Let me open up the feasibility study itself. And let me find that table. Sorry, I did not have the table open.
Mayor,
Yes.
was Jeff going to talk about alternative G?
I was not going to talk about alternative G. I can bring it up if you'd like. Alternative G is essentially alternative H, but with taking up even more of the view corridor and more of the open water for maneuvering. But it is another alternative, and it doesn't gain you any more vessels.
Do you want to see it, Councilmember Fanich?
Well, I just thought that we were discussing three options that were on the table. That's all.
Sounds good. So
Right.
you can put that and gives you another 30 seconds to find what you're looking for.
Okay, well, now I have G open, so I'm just gonna run right to alternative G here now. Okay, can everyone see alternative G at the bottom? Is that the one you're seeing? Okay, so again, this is essentially the opposite, exact opposite of what Councilmember Markley just recommended. This is rotating the main float to the east. And so the thought here was, well, we could gain a different layout for vessels, maybe a few larger vessels, but it doesn't gain, after that we put this together, we realized it doesn't gain us very much, and the maneuvering area was still quite large.
Looks super dangerous, and if it doesn't gain you more.
No, and it crossed over into this, the aquatic lease area that's owned by the Jerkovich family. So we weren't recommending this one.
I can see why.
Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the study. So if you have the study, this is, sorry, let me scroll down to the page number. Page 18 of the study itself. On the PDF, it's page 23. And so I just want to bring this up because this identified, this is alternative A. And you know what, maybe, would you like to see alternative A just as a refresher, maybe? Let me do that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing again here, sorry. I'm going to bring up alternative A because we did add maneuvering areas on that one also. Okay. Okay, here's alternative A from the feasibility study. This provides you with essentially the similar layout of the main float at an angle. And it has 11 vessels capacity. With this inner area, skiffs only because of the limited maneuvering in this tight area between the edge of the aquatic lease and the float. But you can see the maneuvering area here is less impactful, but you get only 11 vessels. So this is alternative A. And so any questions on this alternative? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the study. So this is the study where it compared alternative A to alternative E. And so this is what the mayor is referring to, I believe, to identify the criteria that was reviewed: conformance to the historic working waterfront, net cost, moorage capacity, regulatory compliance, traffic and parking, on water safety. Any questions on this? Is there anything else of the study that we wanted to look at? Otherwise, I'll stop sharing.
I believe, I'm trying to find the study myself, but there were other parts, weren't there other tables that they had?
Oh, there were many other tables, but this one compared the two alternatives, A and E, with the criteria that were used to make the recommendation.
Okay. Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, a question. Did they have any tables in there relative to views or, open space that you can see through out to the open water? And the reason I say that, by the way, is in the original resolution 949, which I read today in its entirety, the highest priority going into that doggone thing was views. I couldn't believe it. And then it kind of got washed aside, okay, and didn't surface again until about 2 weeks ago, okay, called, hey, views are a big deal. And it just seems like it's disappeared from the discussion.
Yes, there is comments made both in the DCG's report itself and comments made by the stakeholders about views. Primarily, it's just the stakeholders saying that they're one of their main concerns is impacts to the view corridor, less open space.
Okay, the second thing is the size of this thing. I was looking for some sort of comment relative to regional versus local, okay? A local fleet versus regional. And many of these configurations, the higher number of boats rely on drawing from other areas, okay? Not incremental additions to the fleet. They're just simply drawing them from other areas, okay? And that's something that troubles me a little bit. The words in the report were that, hey, this is essentially a declining industry, is what they said, okay? It has leveled out a little bit in the last few years, but it's not a growth industry by any means. So what we're talking here is substitution, not additional capacity for a growing fleet. Okay, we're talking about going out beyond the borders of Gig Harbor and saying, yeah, would you like to come here? Would you like to come here? Would you like to come here? I'm not sure I understand how we fit that into the original mission of this thing, which was locally focused, to be quite honest.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yes, it's been documented over and over that there are over 75 or 100 vessels that are licensed in Gig Harbor. So these are going to be a local fleet. They're not pulling people from Bellingham or Seattle. These are, unfortunately, they're Gig Harbor fishermen that have to moor their boats there because there's no place to moor it in Gig Harbor. So we're not drawing foreign fishing to Gig Harbor. We're supplying our own fishermen a place to moor.
But they don't have a place to moor today.
Well,
that's why they're in Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, and other places.
Okay, it's not by their choosing based on fishing, like people that go to Alaska that are licensed.
Not at all. In fact, I think.
Wait a minute. There's people with boats in Alaska that are licensed in Gig Harbor. I read it. I read the list. I went through it. Okay, are we going to draw those people?
We're going to get Gig Harbor people back in Gig Harbor. And nobody's in Alaska because they want to be.
Okay. The last part of that, and I guess, Daniel Kenny, I need your judgment on this. I know Council Member Franich before brought up the issue for a nonprofit that we were providing dockage space for the paddlers. Now we have a for-profit group that we are now essentially potentially subsidizing. We haven't talked anything about who's paying for what on this deal that I'm aware of. I haven't seen anything called, here's the split. Right now, I think we're paying for it all. That's my assumption. Am I wrong? So as part of this, you want the views cut down. Do you want to subsidize the, and by the way, the spots that are freed up, many of those spots are owned by families of those boats, okay? And in fact, the report talked about the friends and family rates that many of these guys got. I'm sorry, but that is troublesome. And I will rely on you, Mr. Kenny, called, it seems to me like we've got a nonprofit fronting for a profitable group, and the city's going to subsidize it.
I'm not entirely sure what your question is. I don't know the finances beyond, the city's building a dock, and I'm sure there's moorage. So they're going to be paying for the moorage, as far as I'm aware of it.
But the net present value discussion in the report said you'll never break even. You can't get there. It's a loss no matter which one you build. We're subsidizing them.
I do know some fishing families that actually have had moorage on their dock for years. Yep. And no one's come to them to want to lease it. And I also have a concern that, are we allowing a local fisherman to sell their dock and then move all the docks, just move all the boats down to this dock? So are we making it so someone can sell their dock for millions of dollars and then all the boats just move down to what we build? Is that really a wise thing to do? Because I've heard that even from fishermen.
That's a great question. By the way, if they open that free space that they got that dock, they can open it to commercial and all, to private boats, okay, pleasure boats. They can charge higher rates, and they can charge higher rates for 12 months. The last time we discussed this, there's going to be nothing in these docks for 2 months for sure, okay? And we took off the table, if I remember correctly, private vessel dockage in those spaces in the months of July and August.
Okay, Councilmember Markley. Where'd you go? You moved to the spot. Go ahead, Markley. Up, you're on mute.
Councilmember Rodenberg had his hand raised first.
I know, but I'm calling on people that haven't spoken. So that's.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking of changing my mind about speaking. So okay. Have him go ahead and speak, and I'll decide if I want to speak.
You got it. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, those moorage spots are going to be rented at the going rate, and the city's investing in a pier, and you're leaving out the educational purposes, the whole reason we redid the net shed there. And I think it's an insult to say that these fishing families will sell their personal docks to move to a public dock. That's a ridiculous statement, and I think that it's insulting to the fishing families to say that.
Well, I might say the dock to the west is for sale right now, the whole dock. So it's a fact, and many docks have sold, and that one to the west is for sale. So
I'd like a point of order here. There's been a few questions, but we're getting into a discussion here, and this is meant to be questions. And I think we should go to the many people who are here for public comment, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss this afterwards. And again, I'll remind the council that we're here to discuss whether we're approving this feasibility study, not debating the different dock designs, which I look forward to having that discussion, but that's not the topic for tonight.
Point well taken. With that, I will open up the public comment period. Bob, Larson, have there been written comments that you'd like to read?
Mayor, Council, yes, we've received numerous comments. So bear with me. I want to read every one of these.
Right, and I won't say that you'd like to read, that you will read. We will read them all.
Yes. The first one I have in front of you is from Nancy and Nick Jerkovich, 3710 Harborview Drive. We would like to urge you to approve the linear configuration for the commercial fishing dock. This will preserve more open space for all, including the view corridor. This plan also conforms with all other commercial fishing docks in our harbor and will allow for rafting boats if necessary. The need for moorage has been greatly exaggerated. We have not been contacted for fishing boat moorage for many years, and it was available. We had moorage bills from Alaska to Southern California. We are willing to share for a cost evaluation. Thank you for your consideration on this topic. Next one comes from Karen Allen Berg, who writes, I am in favor of a linear dock at the proposed Ancich port. I reside at 3526 Harborview Drive, directly across from the kayak park. We have not even begun to see the impact on the neighborhood when the kayakers are at full operating level. Traffic, parking, and noise impact that will be generated throughout our neighborhood has not been yet experienced to any at capacity level. I am not in favor of renting out slips during the summer to non-commercial boaters to offset the cost of the building, maintenance, and/or operation of Homeport at Ancich Park. I believe that would create use that is not conducive to our neighborhood. Next one is submitted by Lita Dawn Stanton, representing the property at 3615 Harborview Drive. There was a need for loading/unloading facility for the fishermen, and the maritime pier was constructed. There was a need for commercial fishing moorage in Gig Harbor. The linear float design at Ancich Park fulfills that objective. But a small group of fishermen want more. Expanding industrial use, adding slips, will wipe out one of the town's last precious view corridors and forever limit open access for paddlers, rowers, and boaters. Please remember that the general public needs and deserves safe and open waters if they want to recreate at Ancich Park. Please reserve it for our community. Thank you. The next one was submitted by Linda Foster and Nancy Jerkovich, 6828 93rd Street, Court Northwest, and the Jerkovich Pier, 3525 Harborview Drive. We are in favor of the lineage dock at Ancich Park rather than stalls. This park has been designed with two main uses in mind. One is a place for a local fisherman to moor, load, unload, and work. The net shed reflects the tradition of a place to work, and the dock is a place it should be in keeping with the tradition of other linear docks for a fishing fleet. The second use is the paddler's dock. This dock is being designed for use by human-powered watercraft and includes storage for the watercraft. The design of both has considered the view corridor and what impact the designs will have on it. Current plans for the paddler's dock help to preserve the view, and the linear dock will do the same. Thank you for considering the linear dock as the best choice for the dock at Ancich Park. Next submittal is from Mary Ellen Jerkovich Gilmore. I'm writing this letter to express concerns over the possibility of a non-linear fisherman's float or docking system at Ancich Park. Number one, there has been great efforts thus far to keep the beautiful open view corridor as uncluttered as possible with unnecessary obstruction. The Jerkovich family members, after much consideration, helped the city to keep the view corridor open by subleasing the upper portion of their float system to help accommodate this openness. Number two, there has been great care and expense in keeping the net shed historical. Likewise, the aesthetics of the docking portion should be in keeping with the historic commercial dock design for visual and historical continuity at the park site. Number three, safety is an issue when combining family and adolescent self-propelled water use vessels with larger commercial powered vessel in a limited water area space. Large commercial vessels whose ingress and egress necessitate backing up in an east to west manner due to the docking slip configuration would make it more difficult for coming and going and would be a more accident prone design. Blind spots in commercial vessels and boat height and size differentiation would add to the traffic flow and complexities for boat traffic in the open water area of the park. The possibility of accidents is less probable where large vessels are not forced to back out into the open park waters. I believe these three reasons make the linear type of docking system more aesthetically pleasing, more historically whole, and a safer space for all, excuse me. Thank you for taking the effort and time to design this park with the most detailed considerations. It is the small details in any design that make a design in space for public use an amazing place to go to. Next submittal is from Andy Babbage. It indicates the F/V of Ocean Dream. Must be his boat. As a third generation active commercial fisherman, I'd like to share my thoughts on why I would recommend rejecting Resolution 1209. Current and future needs for moorage exceed slips available on Alternative E. Rafting should not be considered a safe option for moorage. Most ports do not allow rafting due to liability. Rafting creates more maneuvering required when an inside boat needs to exit. Rafting creates liability for boat owners and facility owners. In storms, rafting, in parentheses larger mass, causes more strain on docks and mooring lines with potential damage occurring. People climbing over and across boats has proven to be dangerous. Rafting creates more maneuvering, not less. Having to lengthen power cords creates more potential for electrical fire and risk of power loss. Alternatively, finger floats create safe and secure moorage for the size of commercial fishing vessels of today. They are a practical and functional moorage solution. Thank you for your time and consideration on this important matter. Next letter or submittal is from Guy Hoppin, 8402 Goodman Drive, Northwest Gig Harbor. I participated in the Resolution 949 and Resolution 1209 processes. 949 was a result of a public process to determine future use of Ancich Park. 949, managed by the city, involved 19 stakeholders representing a broad spectrum of interests, including Kayak Club and at-large community members. Resolution 949 included multiple public forums allowing citizens to weigh in. Council unanimously approved Resolution 949. Resolution 1209, on the other hand, is based on a $35,000 study implemented by a Seattle consulting firm that interviewed 13 city-selected stakeholders, all of whom were Ancich Park neighbors and commercial fishermen. 12 of those stakeholders' views were already very well known at City Hall. When the interviewees were selected, we expected the study would recommend an inadequate facility or maybe no facility. That expectation was realized. Linear moorage facility moors 6 boats, give or take. A handful of non-fishermen insist that a linear moorage facility meets local commercial fishing vessels' moorage need. It does not. Design H, however, moors 15 to 20 boats, assures at least 100 feet of open water view corridor that in turn provides plenty of buffer for human-powered craft safety. How can Design H be viewed as anything but a reasonable solution? The future of commercial fishing in Gig Harbor hinges on creating an adequately sized public moorage facility. No other waterfront community on the west coast of the United States or Canada relies on private property for commercial fishing fleet moorage. The era of private fishing family properties providing moorage for Gig Harbor fishermen is vanishing. Another fishing family property is reportedly for sale. Council is faced with a decision that will determine whether a Gig Harbor tradition and way of life will remain or disappear. Please reject Resolution 1209 and adopt Design H as Gig Harbor's commercial fishing Homeport facility. Thank you. Next submittal is from Greg Lavrovich, 5310 72nd Avenue Northwest, Gig Harbor. Resolution 1209 claims that Alternative E, the linear float, can expand, and that somehow that later expansion is fiscally responsible or even possible. Those supporting the expansion concept are the same ones that do not support a reasonably sized facility such as Design H. Over time, we have heard proponents of a linear float claim expansion at a later date made sense. In fact, it does not. Staging a waterfront construction company is expensive. Do it twice is twice as expensive. The construction company, if they were expanding a linear float to Design H, would be gearing up to drive 7 pilings and to install 7 finger floats. Design H is not a large project in the first place. It's fiscally irresponsible to stage twice. Expansion at a later date, supporters realize, as we do, that it's taken 8 years and counting since Resolution 949 established commercial fishing use on an existing commercial fishing property zone for future commercial fishing use. They know as we do that fishing advocates are unlikely to work another 8 years or more for expansion. And that reality to applying for and receiving a second round of state and federal overwater permitting and a second round of finding suitable mitigation will make the reality of expansion at a later date highly unlikely. I believe that facility expansion was improperly analyzed in a deficient 1209 study and should not be relied upon. Please reject Resolution 1209 and adopt a common sense version of Design H that protects the view corridor as a solution. The next submittal is from Tom Lavrovich. Dear council members, as a lifelong resident and third generation commercial fisherman who is fortunate enough to have my own moorage, I strongly support Float Design H and urge you to support it as well. I would decrease the 2 80-foot slips on the Jerkovich side, making them 60 feet, and add 1 80-foot slip to the Ancich side, also making stall 13/14 a 60-foot stall. The linear dock design would simply not be large enough. As we speak, the adjacent Ancich Terabocha dock is selling to new private individuals that will most likely not support the commercial fishing community. Sadly, as time goes on, more of this will occur, proving the need for Dock H. Thank you, Tom Lavrovich, 3811 Harborview Court Drive, Gig Harbor. The next submittal is from Trevor Nordine on Hudson Street. When I recently moved to Gig Harbor from Colorado, what attracted me to the area is its palpable heritage as an active fishing community. To me, this authenticity is what makes Gig Harbor unique. The town's character is defined by its past, and I would like to share my support for the cultivation of a continued strong commercial fishing presence. To that end, I do not support the adoption of Resolution 1209 and the Ancich Homeport Feasibility Study's recommendation for Alternative E. The next submittal is from Mike and Amanda Babbage. After viewing the Ancich Homeport Feasibility Study and the recommendation of a final design concluded by the consulting services the David O. Consulting Group, we are opposed to the adoption of Resolution 1209 due to the recommendation of Design E. Design H would better serve the commercial fishing fleet and does not pose any greater concerns than already identified in the study. It is clear from the findings of the study that the purpose of the Homeport is to maximize moorage and to provide adequate moorage for fishermen. What is not addressed is the quality of moorage. Finger dock space provides a higher quality use for commercial fishing boats, and is the reason publicly owned home ports overwhelmingly are designed as such. There's no data provided in the study to support a safety concern with Design H. Questions regarding impacts to the Millville neighborhood provided a mixed response without a clear and outstanding impact. The study clearly demonstrates that the Homeport will financially support itself by maximizing moorage and that 1,200 linear feet should be provided, which is not possible with Design E. As historic fishing family members, active commercial fishing operators, owners of multiple vessels without moorage in Gig Harbor, and parents of future commercial fishers, we ask that the council support Design H and reject Resolution 1209. Next submittal is from Zach Worrell. He's with Minter Bay. What's that? What does FV stand for? I apologize for asking that at this point.
Fishing vessel.
Thank you. My name is Zach Worrell. I own and operate the commercial fishing vessel Minter Bay and own a home located at 8321 Goodman Drive, Gig Harbor. The purpose of this email is to voice my opposition to Resolution 1209. This proposal does not provide nearly enough permanent moorage for the local fishing fleet. I and many other local fishing vessel owners are forced to moor our vessels in Alaska due to the lack of moorage in Gig Harbor. I was lucky to find private residential moorage on the county side of Gig Harbor for my vessel this winter, but there is no guarantee that this arrangement will be available again in the future. It is my understanding that Resolution 1209 provides for a single linear float with potential moorage for approximately 8 58-foot limit vessels. A facility of the proposed size will not even come close to serving the current demand for commercial moorage. In order to support and retain our commercial fleet, we need to provide adequate moorage for the local fleet. In my estimation, a facility capable of supporting at least 20 limit-sized vessels would be required to satisfy the current demand for commercial moorage. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. The next submittal is from Mike Skrivanich. His address is 11920 158th Street Northwest, Gig Harbor. My family is a commercial fishing family in Gig Harbor since 1909. Please say no to resolution 1209. Please help the commercial vessels with a place to call home. This would be beneficial to the city. And my last one that I have in written form is from Nick Babich of 13310 Purdy Drive. As a commercial fisherman, I am strongly against the linear dock. If this was the best way to tie up boats, marinas wouldn't exist. From Alaska to California, not one fishing community has a linear dock. I hear a lot about history in Gig Harbor. I'm proud of my history and our fathers and friends that have fished in the past. None of them would be in favor of the linear dock either. They would be for this great town they have loved and seen as one of the most respected fishing communities around. I support Design H without the 80 footers on the Jerkovich side and hope that you all will also. Mayor, that concludes the written comments that I've received.
Yes,
Mayor
Molly.
Kuhn? Mayor,
Yes.
I've got one more written comment that wasn't included in Bob's parcel because she said at the last moment that she'd like to have it read.
Okay,
Yeah,
it was before the 3 o'clock deadline.
Yes, she did.
Okay, go. Would you be okay with reading it yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
This is from Cindy Lumsden. And she said, Dear Mayor Kuhn and Gig Harbor City Council members, I am 100% backing the linear float option for the Ancich Park Homeport project. It's important that our local commercial fishing vessels have a mooring option that is not only safe and cost effective, but one that also has the least amount of impact in the view corridor. I look forward to this project moving forward and seeing our local fishing fleet using this lineal float option. Thank you, Cindy Lumsden, and she lives at 3710 Sellers Street.
Thank you. Now I will open it up to the callers. Colleen Paris, go ahead. Please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually Steve Paris, but Steve Paris, 9716 Crescent Valley Drive, Gig Harbor. Gig Harbor, as you all know, has a rich history with commercial fishing. It's got a real healthy presence today and will likely have the same well into the future. Nearly half of my life has been here. I came to this place because of fishing. My hope is that the city will support a Homeport dock facility that is able to house a sizable fleet into the future, something I fear that the linear dock will not be able to do. As perhaps the oldest lasting and living industry in this city, one which continues to have a big draw as to the character of what Gig Harbor is, and hopefully will continue to be, time for preserving space for this future is short due to the growth that we've seen here in present times. As this process moves forward, please help secure a future for the commercial fishing fleet that continues to call this place home. Please support the larger, more practical, and more accommodating H design. For me, some of the comments that I've heard is kind of ludicrous to consider a minimal dock space for commercial boats to try to preserve a little bit of what's left as far as the view is for, in particular, individual homes across from the site for drive-bys and for people walking. Just look at the transition of the views in Gig Harbor with the influx of yachts over the years, the covered moorage that has taken up a majority of the views in the harbor. The view kind of is what it is. Rudenberg mentioned, and I'll comment on this point, my boat is in Alaska because I have very little opportunity of a place for moorage here in my hometown. I keep it up in Skagway, Alaska, and I'm not going to keep working too many more years fishing. I think I've got another 10 years in it. It'd be real nice for me to bring it back home with the support of the city. The linear dock is, as far as a tradition, is really not much of an argument. There's little room left in the harbor, and it is my hope that Gig Harbor creates a home port that'll accommodate the numerous boats that are around in this area that need substantial moorage. Thank you. Cheers. Here's to 75 more years of commercial fishing.
Thank you, Steve. Joni, go ahead. Joni, if you could state your name and address.
Joni Dupel, 3304 Shailene Street. Unmute. Okay, am I there? Okay. Yep. Joni Dupel, 3304 Shailene Street. Council and Mayor Kuhn, I'm speaking tonight as a proponent to the linear design. When my family first offered to sublease our tideland rights, we did so to make it easier for the city to complete the project, alleviate costs of upwards of $500,000, maintain the view corridor, and preserve the last unspoiled part of Gig Harbor's waterfront. The original survey, as you may recall, recommended a linear docking system. Resolution 949's original purpose was to make sure the view corridor remained open and the linear floats are the most aesthetically pleasing as you do not have to look at boats docked sideways. Further, marine float slips congest navigational waterways, especially in an area with limited ingress and egress that would combine large and small crafts of all types and would create an almost unavoidable safety problem. The proposed system would increase boat traffic exponentially and would frankly be an eyesore. Finally, this is simply money that does not have to be spent. Therefore, I'm asking the council to stick with the original design to preserve the historical integrity of our working waterfront on behalf of our family's marina, but also the human-powered craft, commercial vessels, and also who will enjoy the Ancich Park for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. Are there others, other callers that would like to speak? Yes, go ahead, Nick Babbage. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Nick.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Nick Babish, 13310 Purdy Drive. You know, I think the beginning of this, when Councilman Hines started speaking, I wouldn't mind answering some of his questions, but I think 99% of the stuff he said was absolutely false. He said that all the boats aren't from a Gig Harbor. We don't have a fleet here. And that's completely ludicrous. So tomorrow morning, my little brother is actually going to Valdez to check on a boat that we left there. So in 45 years of fishing, only time we've ever left a boat up here in Alaska. And there's not one fisherman in Gig Harbor that's ever left a boat in Alaska. And after this experience, leave it in Alaska, I won't leave mine there again either. Left another boat in Newport for 6 months because we didn't have a place to put it. So if we had the moorage, those boats would be there. And to say that the Jerkovich dock or the Tarabocha dock is not a fishing dock. It hasn't been a fishing dock since George Ancich passed away and Nick Tarabocha. And the mayor said that it's for sale. Well, my brother and I actually made a full price offer on it, got turned down. So we knew we needed moorage. So against Mr. Himes, this is a growth industry. If it wasn't, we wouldn't still be doing it. You may not think we're the brightest bulbs, but we've made our livelihood doing this. We're still making a decent living. We're not looking for free moorage. We're not looking to be subsidized. We're just looking for moorage. We're willing to pay. I've never had a slip yet where I haven't had to pay. And I'm fortunate right now. My cousins let me tie up at their dock, but 3 of my boats have no moorage. And as far as the safety concern is, we spend so much time on backing these boats up and hitting a kayak, but we don't move that much. And these kayaks, when they go out, they're going out into the open waters where yachts are, not fishing boats tied to the dock. If they're worried about their safety, they wouldn't be out in the open waters where yachters are traveling, partying. We are probably the safest individuals to be around because it's our job. We're trained to be careful. So the safety concerns are zero. And I don't mean to be rude, but I took a lot of your comments as insulting because we are hardworking people, not asking for a free handout. We're just asking for a chance. And the linear dock, as my brother stated in his comment, it is unsafe. There's a lot of safety issues against it. I'm the president of an insurance board, and I can tell you massive instances where we have problems with boats breaking loose because they're tied up and people getting hurt from crossing boats. And I'd be happy to answer questions because I did put you on the spot, but that's what I have to say. And I respect you guys listening.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, other callers. Many people wrote letters. I will wait a little longer to see if anyone pushes *6 or *9. Okay, I will close the public comment time. Now it's time for council deliberation. Councilmember Dinson.
Yes, there's so much to say on this topic, and I'm really trying to keep to the title of the resolution, which is adopting the Ancich Homeport feasibility study. As we've heard from the experts in our Gig Harbor area, the commercial fishermen themselves, and certainly the grand majority of fishermen that I've spoken to, they do not agree with the findings of this feasibility study, and many of them have a problem with how these findings were arrived at. In terms of this dock, the whole purpose of this pier is to keep the fishing industry alive and thriving here in Gig Harbor. And a lot of the comments that have been quoted that Mr. Babbage took offense at and questioned came out of this feasibility study that the fishermen themselves have said are not true and that they don't agree with. And again, these are the experts in our area. If we're going to keep the fishing industry alive and thriving in our area, we have to do more than just accommodate the number of boats that we have here. We need to accommodate the boats that want to be here, the folks that are living here or grew up here and would like to return here with their boats but have no place to moor their boats, the families who have kids that would like to take on the family tradition, have boats elsewhere, are in the process of purchasing boats and want to keep them here in Gig Harbor. I mean, it's not just about mooring the boats we have in the harbor right now. If we are looking for a vibrant future for this industry, we need to provide adequate moorage to show that we have a vibrant area, that we have adequate moorage that, similar to the canoe and kayak team, that they can rely on and provide stability for this industry. So getting to the question of the feasibility study, given the questions and the fact that so many of the fishermen that I have talked to don't agree at all with the findings, I certainly will not be voting to adopt this study tonight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Himes.
So we're all clear. Can you see that graph? That's data of actual fishing vessels registered in the state of Washington. Now, tell me whether the slope goes down or whether it goes up. Enough said. And I hope Mr. Babbage is still watching here, okay? I can only go by what the experts on this data said, okay? And if you've got a beef, contact them, not me. I'm strictly going by what I'm told, okay? Second item is the mission creep here. when Resolution 949 was approved, it was strongly influenced by retaining the cultural benefits and the history of fishing here in Gig Harbor. It was not a let's save the industry discussion. Let's go region-wise. Let's do all these things. This is mission creep, as we used to call it. This thing's getting bigger than Ben-Hur. We still don't know the cost of this thing, okay? And I can't imagine with the split of respondents that we've had tonight in their comments that we would approve or disapprove something that we don't know about, okay? Particularly with this kind of, let's say, disagreement among our citizens on the importance of this. On the attraction side of this thing, it's kind of interesting. It doesn't matter what the size of the dock is. In the 2 highest tourist months in the city of Gig Harbor, there's no boats down there. The fleet's gone in July and August. Go talk to the Waterfront Alliance and they'll show you what the data is. Those are the 2 biggest months in Gig Harbor, and we got nothing to show, okay? So, and by the way, that's irrespective of the size of the dock you build. It doesn't matter. You can have more boats, but they're somewhere else, okay? As far as being here and promoting the industry, that's not a very good argument, let me put it that way. If 0 is still 0 for these units. There are other things I could go through right now, but like I said before, we seem to have a significant divide of opinion, and we don't have what I would say enough facts to back up either side right now. Okay, I've heard both arguments. Okay, on this thing, so I would really like to go back one more time and say, okay, let's have the open house. Let's go through it, make sure everybody understands and the data that goes with it. And then we'll have the discussion. And by the way, the discussion tonight is strictly the so-called alternative E, okay? It is not to promote alternative H. In fact, this wasn't even entered into the discussion until I believe your email came out, Jeff, Thursday or Friday?
You mean the alternatives? Yes. The alternatives were based on a request from Councilmember Rodenberg back from March 4th.
I understand that, but I'm saying, and as far as the agenda packet going out and everything, H was not in there at the onset. Okay.
Correct.
So all we're talking about tonight is essentially alternative E, okay? Yes or no, okay? Or defer or whatever we want. It's not to promote alternative H, and that's got to be at some other date.
Well, one thing I want to do is be able to get this built. And we waited a lot of years to get this built. And we've spent 3 years in public comment. We've spent 3 years with stakeholders. We did. And we did have fishermen down in our AB rooms that were happy with the linear. We had kayakers happy with it. We had the public happy. We had one of the original mayors of Gig Harbor that was a fisherman happy. We had people that were neighbors, but we had a couple people that refused to compromise, and they wanted as big as you could build it. And they weren't willing to compromise. So we had no choice but to get data, national data, and reach out to all the boat owners. And we did. We reached out to over 18. In fact, we couldn't even get a list from the Fishermen's Club of the boat owners. We had to go out and actually piece it together to get all the boat owners. And we actually we made sure that they were all physical boat owners. They weren't just working on the boat. They actually owned a boat. They did a lot of data, DCG. And we actually had staff not myself, but staff called these people and go through large, lots and lots of questions. And then we had DCG go to find out national trends. So I really don't know what, we can kick this around another 5 or 10 years, and then the regulations are going to get so difficult, we're not going to get anything. So this does give us a chance to do fingers. It is a compromise that was started 2 years ago, and then the consultants reached out and they determined that with all the data that they gathered and all the stakeholders, this was the best recommendation. So I don't know what kicking this can down the street for another 5 or 10 years is going to get us, except for maybe nothing. So, Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt where I stand on this issue, but it was very interesting and something I didn't know that Nick Babbage mentioned, that from California to Canada, there's not a single commercial fishing moorage that is linear. I thought that was interesting. And to Councilman Member Denson's point about experts, these experts represent over 100 years of fishing expertise. These skills and knowledge passed down from parents to children for over 100 years. And there was a huge compromise at the beginning. And this, not that we're talking about choosing an option tonight, like the wonderful option H, but it does show a big compromise over what would called a full build out. So I will certainly not be supporting the adopting the Ancich Homeport study. It, as much has been said about it, I think it reeks of backroom deals.
And Councilmember Denson.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to a couple comments here today. It's not mission creep. The entire mission of 949 was to, well, not the entire, but a good part of it was to preserve fishing in Gig Harbor. And to do that, we have to, and Councilmember Himes, I'm sure appreciates that, this being an economist and an engineer and being concerned with data, you have to have that critical mass of spots for boats in order to preserve not only what we have right now, but making sure that we've got room and that we have a fleet in the future. This is about being practical, it's about being cost effective, and it's about meeting the real need for Gig Harbor to keep its fishing fleet, not the historic fishing fleet. We've just heard from, 8 to 10 fishermen that are fishing now, that are successfully fishing now, and they want to continue, and their families want to continue in the future. I wanted to address the point about the fact that the fishing boats aren't here in the summer. For me, this is what makes them such a perfect neighbor for the community paddler dock. Throughout most of the summer, there's not going to be boats moving in and out. And when they do, it's generally at the same time. We can notify, they can talk to the canoers and the kayakers and the paddleboarders and let them know. It's great that they're not there in the summer. It also helps because we really don't need help drawing tourists to Gig Harbor in the summer. You talk to the Waterfront Alliance, we've got tons of tourists. The hotel rooms are full. The streets are full of people in those parking spots. What we need is to draw tourists in that shoulder season. And that is exactly what we're hoping will happen, because we've got this massive fleet of boats for folks to come see all winter long. So it helps in the summer, it helps with our parking issues, it helps with our traffic issues, it helps with the safety of our paddlers. And in the winter months, when the fishermen are here, it helps hopefully draw in tourists to see this industry as they're fixing their nets and they're working on their boats and they're chatting with tourists and residents as well and educating them about this industry. And then I will absolutely agree with the mayor that we have beat this horse for years. We have talked this to death. We have the facts that we're going to have. Unfortunately, we're not going to have complete consensus on this. It's going to be divided. We see a very strict division happening. I don't see that changing. There's, good points on both sides, but I think that we are at the point now, like the mayor said, if we want to see this built, and we don't want to see it built with construction costs continuing to rise and regulations continuing to get more onerous, it's council's job now to make a decision. And I'm not going to call the question I was going to, but I see that council members Franich and Mook would like to say something as well. But I'm hoping we can go ahead and vote on whether we feel this feasibility study is valid, and I will be voting no on that. And then I hope that at the next council meeting, we can start the process of voting on which design we feel is best for our community as a whole.
Great. We're not voting on, the vote isn't on the feasibility study, just so you know. It's on anyway.
Adopting the study.
Yes. Councilmember Franich.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I really find it really quite amusing that council members want to pick and choose what stakeholders groups they want to listen to, what consultants they want to listen to is right and wrong. It's just really something. As far as the nature of moorage facilities up and down the coast, you know, I've been out of the commercial fishing industry for a few decades now, but I would almost guarantee that the fishing, the moorage facilities that Mr. Babbage was speaking about did not have competing interests as Ancich Park does. This is a very rare and unusual thing that we have going there, where we're in the middle of a residential neighborhood. We've got a human-powered watercraft facility right next door. Most areas in Alaska and have strictly commercial moorage facilities that don't have those competing interests going on. So then it all comes down to the number of boats that can be moored. And, you know, we hear or read Mr. Hoppin's estimate on the number of boats that need moorage. Well, alternative E, G, or H does not even come close to meeting any of the needs of those numbers that have been kicked around. So, you know, somebody's going to be a loser in regards to who actually gets to moor there. Then when it comes down to actually adding up the number of boats that can be accommodated there, under alternative H, it's 17, alternative G at 17, alternative E, it's 8. Alternative E has 8 boats. That does not include rafting of the boats, tying up next to each other. If you go with alternative E, you actually, there's in the design drawings, there's 4 slips for 60-foot boats. If you raft those boats together, you come up with 8, which is more than H, which under the current proposal under alternative H only has 6 60-foot slips. So, you know, I understand, and I have lived through when you're rafting and the inside boat wants to move out, you know, it's a real pain in the, you know what, crew members have got to pull the other boat in. And I understand the troubles that can lead to. But for me, the view corridor is something that really needs to be taken into consideration here. And the linear float, I believe, keeps that in place the best. So as of tonight, I will be supporting the linear float. If this does not prevail, I would look forward to the council working towards, if the majority believes that alternative H is a better alternative, then I would really encourage them to remove the 80-foot slips, go with more 60-foot slips, tilt it more towards the Ancich Starbocha side, which if you get rid of the 80-foot slips on that side, you're not going to be encroaching on the ingress egress of the Tarbocha Ancich stock. And at least tilting it in that direction will further the support for keeping the view corridor open as much as possible.
Thank you. Councilmember Wu.
Yes, thank you. I'm here. I agree a lot with Councilmember Rodenberg and Councilmember Denson. This is a fishing village. This is our history. This is what this town is. This is why so many people love this town. Part of it because we do have this fishing village history that they're so proud of. And I think it's a really good idea to actually add this because as Councilmember Denson mentioned, it's the shoulder season. This is a perfect thing to have there because it is a shoulder season that our small businesses also need help. And so bringing people in to actually view a working waterfront is a good thing for Gig Harbor, I believe. I think that's what I've heard our citizens say. So I will not be supporting Resolution 1209. And I am very excited to see, we've heard Director Lanham mention how he can move along and change some things on number H. I am excited to see what he can do about H and what will work for everyone. So so that's what I'm doing. I'm not supporting 1209 and I'm looking forward to seeing what somewhere down the road Director Lanham can do to image H. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wu. Councilmember Himes.
I guess along those same lines, I believe there's more people in Gig Harbor that will support the views versus the differential in number of boats between these two alternatives. And therefore I will be supporting 1209 tonight. And that is a vote for people who enjoy views more than they would, let's say, some incremental boats. The boats are still there. There's not as many of them. Thank you.
You want to call the question then? You want to do the motion then and get us going?
I will call a question then.
Or you want to do a motion or call the question? Which do you want?
I'll call the question first.
Second.
Was there a motion?
No.
We need a motion on the resolution.
Oh, you're right.
Well, he's calling the question to end debate.
End debate.
Well, okay. Well,
You have to call the question on a motion that is lying on the table. So somebody needs to make the motion and then you can move straight to vote on it.
Sorry, Councilmember Himes, my fault, really.
Okay. Therefore, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 1209 here tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, I'll do a roll call. All those in favor of Resolution 1209 adopting the Ancich Homeport feasibility study, say aye, and I will start with Councilmember Franich.
Aye.
Councilmember Denson.
No.
Councilmember Himes.
Aye.
Councilmember Markley.
No.
Councilmember Rodenberg.
No.
Councilmember Wook.
No.
Okay. Motion fails 4-2. Councilmember Franich.
So where does this leave us?
Boy, you know, I've spent 3.5 years and trying to make it so we could compromise somewhere, and it doesn't leave us anywhere. So it's Jeff, do you have any more input than that? I mean, it's just, you know, we can go down and do a maximum build out as some people are wanting, and then we could easily have other people really strong and say, well, you're getting rid of the view or whatever, and it just goes back and forth just like the kayakers. Jeff?
Mayor, I guess my only input on that is a question for council is if we're going to look at other alternatives, maybe similar ones to alternative H. Is there interest in having more discussion or having the feasibility updated to reflect the new alternative, or is there enough data already just to proceed with what we have?
Well, many fishermen that didn't want to compromise told us that they didn't trust the study, and we didn't even have a consultant picked. So I don't think going out further on a study is going to get us any further. The Councilmember Rodenberg.
I would suggest that the mayor direct Director Langhelm to make those changes to alternative H. I think I heard a consensus tonight for alternate H. I think I even heard Councilmember Franich suggest that had E failed, that H would be appropriate if it was tweaked a little bit. So I think there's a consensus of approving alternate H. So if I would suggest that Director Langhelm do that sketch, make it up. I don't think it's an expensive proposition. Bring it to council and let's move on it.
Right. We did hear from Councilmember Franich that, and others, that if we did tilt it west a bit and we got rid of some of the 80 foots, I am worried about a safety hazard with the kayakers. I really am. And I'm not so worried about the 60, but I am worried about an 80-foot boat trying to back up. And I also know that more than likely we're going to be putting commercial boats here when the fishermen are gone. And then and I've heard from kayakers that they're concerned about yachts that are, partying and everything, and they're backing up, and I've heard kayakers say that they're not concerned about the fishing boats, but they are concerned about the yachts, the ones that are out there and not used to this. And so I think maybe if we angle it, maybe if we got rid of some of the 80s, and we can try that. So, Councilmember Denson.
Yes, I liked the suggestions of Councilmember Markley and Councilmember Franich. Obviously, we want to do as much for the view corridor as we can while also having an adequate fishing facility. I share your concern, Mayor, for the transient boats. And I thought that we discussed several meetings ago, it was a while ago, I used to be really in favor of the transient boats because it could help fund this pier. But then hearing from the neighbors, they're concerned about the partying and the noise and all of that. I'm not in favor of the transient, and the safety issues too. Again, I'm not worried about the fishermen. I'm concerned about the boats going in and out all the time, especially in the summer when the paddlers are going to be really busy. So I would prefer not to have transient boats in there. And I don't think that that's a done deal. We hadn't decided on that.
No, we hadn't, but it's going to be pretty odd to have empty slips for months and months and months and not put it out. I don't see that happening with future councils, but Councilmember Franich.
Yeah. When can we finally put a stake in the heart of the recreational boaters there in the summer? What process?
I don't understand that question.
What process do we need to go through to make it a determination, if the majority of the council supports it, to not have the recreational boats during the summer? Because I don't know, Councilmember Rodenberg wants to speak for the fishermen, and I'm not going to speak for any fishermen other than the few that I've talked to. I know that the commercial fishermen, in a lot of cases, they pay for the moorage year round, whether they're there or not. And so I absolutely think it's a horrible idea for recreational boaters there for the reasons Councilmember Denson spoke of. It's the impact on the neighborhood, and to some degree, this potential for conflicts all summer long with recreational boats moving in and out of there, more so for the impact of the neighborhood. This whole park project is going to be a tremendous blow to the quality of life in our neighborhood as it is. So does that need to, what do I need to come up with a resolution that would preclude that? Or what is the process that I would need to go through to get this before the council in relationship to the recreational boating aspect?
Well, just so, I mean, my feeling is if you build it, whatever you build will, if it's gonna just sit empty for 6 months, it just takes a majority council to reverse anything you've done down the road, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So I found out that the fishermen had worked with the past mayor, and the whole plan was to have, in fact, the crane there, they told me was gonna take jet skis and pleasure boats off the yachts. And I had no idea that, and the fishermen had worked with the past mayor, and they were planning to build put yachts there. And that's what the crane was going to be for. They told me and so I think if you build a dock, it's going to change at one point. So,
well, we can't control what future councils are going to do. My question was, what do I need to do right now as a council person to get, I mean, at least get it to a vote of this council on whether or not to do that. The whole notion that you just explained about the crane, I don't really buy into that. But anyway, I'm just asking for direction on what I need to do.
Well, I don't think Jeff, I don't think we can pass a resolution on something that's not even built yet, of the mechanism of something that isn't even there yet, right?
Well, it's essentially a policy direction of the council that would be adopted by resolution.
Could you do that? And do we do that before we even build the thing?
It seems a little out of step to do it before it's built, but like you said, Mayor, I mean, this council could adopt that if desired, and then next makeup of a council could reverse that.
Right.
Even before it's built.
So that still hasn't answered my question on the process I need to work through.
Well, my understanding is one way the council could adopt that policy is adopt a resolution. I don't know if Daniel Kenny has any other input on that.
Yeah, I concur. I think that would be one way to do it right now. I think another way, I think it's probably premature right now, but there's going to be probably an amendment to the city code to adopt rules, policies for the use of the dock. But that will certainly, I would envision that being later because it would be adopted when the dock is ready.
That's typically what that exactly, Daniel, that's where we need to set rules once the dock is either under construction or about to be under construction, so that we can have those rules for there. So if we want to wait until then, that's the time to do it. Otherwise, resolution could be setting direction now.
So Councilmember Franich, if you want to reach out to Jeff, you can do that to try to do that. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Yeah, I would support Councilmember Franich's idea of no pleasure boats during the summer. And I think we should make those darn fishermen pay a whole year's lease. Make them pay year round, because I think that was their intention, and it's what they do everywhere else. So if the slips are being paid for year round, then there shouldn't be any need for the revenue.
Good point. Councilmember Himes.
Yeah, I too would support a resolution on this. In fact, I'm looking right now at resolution 949, number 3, under findings of fact, allow use of the commercial dock float system for transient moorage during summer fishing season. We got to shut that baby off, okay, once and for all. It's there, it's in print, it's part of the resolution. You can read it. It's on page 2 of 2 or 2 of 4 in the whole deck. So yeah, I'm supportive. And I think and by the way, they said do it before you, prior to implementation of this thing, okay? Come to that conclusion. So I think we better turn it around before implementation.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I guess there is a little direction on that, so that's good. Council reports, council comments. Public Works Committee, Councilmember Franich.
Yes, the Public Works Committee met on May 11th. It was a fairly short meeting. The first item of business was we had a discussion about a gentleman that wanted a release of interest on a parcel of property that he owns up on Peacock Hill. And I guess I'll ask Jeff now. Were we waiting to get some input from the planning side of the department on that?
Well, we're waiting for the legal description of the easement from the applicant.
Okay. And then we discussed the 6-year transportation improvement plan. And I believe there was a consensus of the committee members that we need to get the numbers, although they really don't mean anything, to get the numbers more in line with priorities. The numbers are kind of scattered. I believe there's about 27 projects there, but I think there was a feeling that we need to get those more in line with priorities and not just random numbering. We had a brief discussion on the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space update that is going to be happening. Well, might not happen this year, but it's going to be happening. Is it going to happen this year, Jeff?
It has to, in order to be adopted, to meet RCO requirements by March 1st of next year.
Of next year? Yeah, okay. And then we had a very interesting conversation on the Ancich human-powered watercraft storage facility. And the Parks Commission had made some recommendations on fees and time of year, whether there was going to be a staggered time of year when the lottery was drawn. And so that's something that I would really encourage the rest of the council to review the Parks Commission's recommendations on that plan, because it's not going to be, it could even be by this winter, if we get the facility built, that we're going to need to have these what we're going to charge and the length of how long the term's going to be. So Jeff, did you have any follow-up on that that you could explain on what you think the best process is for the full council to move forward on?
You're saying specifically related to the Ancich boat storage building terms and rental terms?
Yeah, in relation to the Parks Commission's recommendations.
Well, essentially where we are now is that the administration is going to develop the terms for the public's rental of the facility. We're going to be looking for input from the public on trying to find out how much people are willing to pay, how many different types of boats are there, so we can figure out the storage racks themselves. But the next time the council sees this is when we come to council for adopting the fees for renting of the storage facility. So that's the next time council will see it. But if you want to see the terms that Councilmember French is referring to, just take a look at the city's calendar for the May 13th?
11th.
Thank you. May 11th Public Works Committee meeting. On that is my memo to the Public Works Committee, and attached to that memo is the overview that came out from the Parks Commission's review of the terms, rental terms. So that's up right now.
Thank you very much for that extended information, Jeff. And that was the meeting. Thank you.
Can I add something, please?
Sure.
So I think one of the discussions regarding the storage room also is the safety challenges of what about the door. The door needs to be able to be shut in order to keep the items inside this building safe. And so that I don't think that's been quite decided. That's still being worked on because it's important that the inside of this building remains safe and intact while everybody's out on the water. So have we done any more about the safety, Jeff?
No, we have not. We're needing to, I need to put together a summary for the mayor to consider, and I haven't received all the data yet for that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Wook. You know, this is it's a pretty complex topic that I would encourage you all to take a look at that. I know it's going to be the mayor's direction, but I would look at it so you're kind of aware of where it is right now, and if you have anything to add, maybe you can talk to the administration.
Thank you. Councilmember Hines.
Yeah, I would concur with Councilmember French on that. And I may be in the minority here, but there should be some degree of fairness relative to what the Canoe and Kayak Club is paying and what an individual comes in there and pays to store his or her kayak of comparable size. Okay. So I'll just leave it at that. But as you go through that report, at least consider that idea, because I think it's a big one.
Okay, thank you. And then we have the Finance and Safety Committee, Councilmember Rodenberg.
May 17th, we had a meeting of the Finance and Safety Committee meeting. We had 3 items on the agenda. One was the fireworks ordinance violation penalties. It was on the agenda to see if we should reduce that from the $1,000 fine. And after a lot of discussion, we voted on it, and it was decided to leave the penalty at $1,000. That won in a vote 2-1. The other thing was on the agenda was the updates to the fee schedule, and that was recommended to be passed, and that was on the consent agenda tonight and was approved. The other item that took up more time than we might have thought it was, but it's very important, and that was the bicycle speed on Cushman Trail. Many of you have received letters of people complaining about the speed of bicycles. There's a lot of other small complaints, but primarily the speed. And one person actually clocked them, and they had an incredible speed of up to about 50 miles an hour on some of these downhill runs. And so we wanted to know what we could do about that. And Chief Busey suggested that to have speed limit signs would require an ordinance. And then once we had the ordinance, we'd have to purchase the signs. And then after we did that and installed them, we'd have to enforce it, which is very problematic. So we decided against formal speed limit signs. But after the meeting, it was just mainly, we didn't come to any conclusion. But after the meeting, I reached out to Parks because they actually are in charge of managing the trail. And I spoke both to Roger Henderson and Ben Coronado. They had some really good ideas and sent me samples of signage having to do with directional traffic, the direction in which walkers will walk and bicyclers will bicycle. They even had done some preliminary study on what that might cost. And in the 6 miles of the trail that goes through the city, not the UGA, but just the city, they had determined, I don't know how they came to this, but 24 signs. And it was a installed cost of about $12,000. Not that that's set concrete by any means, but they said that funding was allowed in the 2021 budget, but was pooled. I didn't find any documentation to that effect, but it's something we should think about in the 2022 budget, is putting some signs for safety. That was about the end of our meeting. Yes, Councilman Wook.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to also say, when we're talking about permit fees, that this particular meeting was about some specific permit fees. But when we had Director Knudsen there, and the planning and building permit fees have not been increased in at least 4 years, perhaps longer. And so hopefully next year, planning and building, the planning department, community development will be able to take a look at the planning building fees, because these are paid for, and we need to make sure that the people getting these fees pay the proper amount, the appropriate amount. Otherwise our citizens are going to be paying for this, and that's not appropriate. So I'm looking forward to seeing when Director Knudsen can get these information for us. Probably won't be until next year, we know, but I think it's important that we make sure our citizens are not paying these fees that the builders should be paying. We need to get those fees in line. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wu. That's a very important point. And that was a summary of the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, before we all go, how about let's work on the schedule for that study session for the kayakers. Could we, instead of us reaching out to each of you and we burn off a week or something, there is June 3rd, which is soon. June 3rd is a Thursday, and we could, Aaron's still here, one of the coaches. We might ask him if he can even, since he wanted to talk at 3 or 4, but there's 3 o'clock or 3:30 on the Thursday, the 3rd. There's also the stormwater is going to be too long. So there's the 17th as well. I'll give you a minute to think about that as Councilmember Ancich says something, but look at the 3rd or the 17th. I'd rather do it sooner than later, just because, yeah, I think good. Okay, we'll keep going on this. So
I'm available the 3rd. Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's good. Who was that?
Aaron.
Oh, good. Thank you, Aaron. I wanted to know. Now, is 3 or is 3:30 too early, Aaron?
3's fine.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you held on to be able to ask you that, because I wanted to.
Thanks.
Does anyone have a problem with the 3rd at 3:30?
No, that works better for me. Thanks.
Sure.
No problem.
Okay, great. So, so this is, let's advertise this, that this is, and we will accept public comments. So Molly, if you would put June 3rd at 3:30, it's going to be, whatever it was titled tonight, but it's just Gig Harbor Canoe and Kayak Racing Team, Lease in Ancich Park. And we will take public comment. And I Councilmember Wook, we're going to do it at 3:30. It probably will go for a couple hours, but that gives more people a little time to, instead of starting at 3. So I'm sensitive to that. Okay, so
now, sorry, now that you just said that, I have to be done at 5. So
Okay.
I have to be there till 5. I have another meeting, sorry.
all right. So what does everyone want to do? You want to do 3:30 or you want to do 3?
3:30.
Okay, I need some more fingers.
3
Okay, 3
o'clock.
o'clock. Okay, so Molly put a time. It's 3 to 5. It ends at 5. So 3 o'clock, June 3rd. Thank you. It's good. Just saves us a lot of time to just figure that now. And then the team was still there. Councilmember Ancich.
Thank you. I would just like to, I think as you all know, I'm on the board of the Scansy Netshed Foundation, and I appreciate Linda Foster's comments on the condition of the net shed. The roof's been leaking there for 2 years. The paint's been coming off the building for probably more than 2 years. This project has just been getting derailed every year now, and I would just like to see tonight here. I know we can't take a vote on anything under council comments, which I don't encourage, but I would like to put a bug in the ear. I don't know whether it needs to come back as an agenda item or if it can just be a show of hands. But I would really like to encourage the city to move ahead with at least the painting portion of that building. You know, we hosted over 15,000 visitors there at the Net Shed in 2019. It's the centerpiece of downtown Gig Harbor, right in the middle of the park. And to have that building falling into the disrepair that it's becoming, I just don't think it serves the city well. It doesn't serve our foundation well. And we need to just get this moving. And I do not believe that it would be and Mr. Langham, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that this would be a burden on adding a lot of, it would take a lot of staff time to get this project moving. So would you like, Mr. Mayor, how can we come to some?
Right. That's one of the big takeaways of tonight is I wrote down, I agree with you. I wrote down a note to follow up with Jeff. Jeff, I know we were concerned about other structural things inside, but if we went ahead and moved on the roof and
the painting,
well, the roof, yeah. Maybe we let's talk about that. Let's talk about that and see what we can do. So we'll do that, Jeff. Jim, I understand. So we'll talk to Jeff and I'll figure out the extent of what we can do.
Okay, I didn't know if any other council members had any feelings on this one way or another, or if it would even be appropriate for them to share their opinions.
Right.
Well, if we have to do it, either this year or next year or whenever, it would seem to me that this year would be a great time to do it. I could be wrong, but I think we're going to significantly underrun our capital expenditures based on deferrals we've had to date, okay, in terms of what we've got budgeted for this year. So I suspect that we're going to be able to cover this without many problems financially in 2021. So if we have to do it, I think now's a good time to go for it. And by the way, if it doesn't require a lot of internal resources to pull it off, go for it.
So Jeff, we got caught up with the internal structural thing, and some of it came back pretty positive, I believe, as far as not having to do a lot. We also, when they rebuilt the whole foundation, they already worked on a lot of that. What is we have the roof, that's one thing, and we have siding falling off, so that's another. But you're not going to paint this. I guess it is painted. So is it possible to just work on some of these? We were going to put this out for bid, right?
Yes, we were going to have to put it out to bid. The question is are we going to do a public works project that requires a building permit? If it does require a building permit, that's automatically going to take more staff resources than we've been wanting to dedicate toward it. So if we're just painting it, then it's not going to take much staff resources to put together a public works or small works contract to paint it. Isn't an effective way to spend the money to put two contracts out to do work on the same building. And maybe it is more expensive, but maybe it's worth it to do just the painting this year and then deal with any minor structural repairs with roofing another year, and just temporarily have our operations crew patch the roof so that we can minimize the larger leaks.
Now, if they do the painting with, over water, which is tricky, do they have to do permitting for that?
I believe, though, we'll have to check on it to be sure. That's part of our shoreline permit. I believe just repainting the structure would probably be just an ordinary repair and maintenance. But it would be very costly to do that, as we've been talking. It's not just like painting a house, because it is underwater.
But the roof is a total different thing. So we could do them in two different orders, and most roofers are not painters. So
right, yeah, it would just be cost-effective way to go out to bid is to do one large contract instead of two small ones.
Right. Do you think we could do some patching on the roof this year and then just do the painting?
Yeah, let me talk to Ken. I mean, I've already had conversations with Ken to make sure that he addresses the roofing if we're not going to be doing the public works contract this year. But yes, I think we can.
Okay, sounds good. Well, looks like
Thank
council.
you.
Yep, good comment. Okay, so Bob, did you have something? Larson, you had your hand up for a second.
No, I was, you've concluded the discussion. I was going to suggest it wouldn't be appropriate to continue discussing that matter in a public meeting like this.
Right.
Should we take it offline?
No, Jeff's going to talk to Ken and work on it. Okay, with announcements of other meetings, city council study session, Thursday, May 27th at 3 p.m. Civic Center's closed May 31st for Memorial Day holiday. Planning and Building Committee meeting is Monday, June 7th at 3 p.m. We just scheduled a study session for June 3rd at 3 p.m. and City Council study session Thursday, June 10th at 3 p.m. So great. Katrina, do you have anything to add?
Great job tonight, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's not dark yet. It's getting there.
I hope.
It's about the sky as in Councilmember Rodenberg's picture. It's getting close. All right. Do I, Councilmember Jensen?
Just really quick, I just wanted to thank the mayor and staff and the YMCA for getting that lease done. That was huge. Thank God we're finally through that. So thank you for your perseverance there.
Thank you. It's we are getting a lot. We are trying to get a lot accomplished, and we're looking at new guidelines are coming out, quite quickly, and so we're looking at that, and we're looking at recording and video data, and what we can do to get back to open. So yeah, so more to come. All right. If there is no objection, I move to a. Do I have a move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.
Hey, everybody.